to introduce themselves in council district order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin Flynn, Southwest Denver, District 2.
It's a long story.
Good morning, Jamie Torres, District 3.
Good morning, Amanda Sawyer, District 5.
Good morning, Coach M.K. Fleming, District 7.
Good morning, Dr. April Alexander, here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably better if you don't say which district. We'd all get too jealous if we found out you lived in Candy C. DeBacchus
Good morning,
district.
Mr. Chair. Deborah Ortega, City Council at Large.
Sorry, my producer is not helping today.
Everybody.
Everyone's home,
So
and my husband's
today's
working.
amendment
Try not to look directly at him. He's
agenda
super hot. It could be very distracting,
one action item.
as a may.
Bill 20-0895 approves a collective bargaining agreement with the Denver Police Protective Association for 2021-22, which would include a 0% salary increase in 21, suspending the holiday pay provision.
Did you say 0%?
0% for
Okay.
this.
How much is 0%?
Contribution to the Denver.
Zero.
Okay, so that roughly, if we, wait, I know you, so let people know your credentials before you do math, because we had some trouble with that on Monday night.
100-hour.
Yeah, I'm a professor in forensic psychology at the University of Denver.
Okay. So what does that have to do with math? Did you have to, you had to do math?
Yeah, I math. I do a lot of research, so I'm constantly doing statistics. So that's mathy.
So you have 100% confidence interval around that 0% statistic that you just reinforced.
Never 100%, but we usually go around the 95% confidence interval for most studies.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so it's 0% contract increase for next year.
Correct.
And then 2.77% for the year after.
Yeah, I know it's a little over 2 for the following year.
That's not a lot.
And not
But
seeing
it starts working out to a lot.
members who've joined.
If you're talking about their big budget, it does equal.
Laura Walker and Rob Nestor here
Sorry, especially if we're not
to,
furloughing anybody, right?
discuss the
Correct. So what
question.
we're concerned about for the 2022 year is we still don't know the effects of COVID on various city employees for the next year. So to already anticipate a raise for 2022, I think is a little ambitious.
That is.
Good morning, everyone.
I don't know if we're getting a raise in 2022.
Good morning.
By we, I mean
Councilman
him.
Cashman.
I don't actually
So,
make money.
I'm
I just
Laura
have
Walker,
I have a hobby
Deputy Director
business.
of
It's fun.
Safety, and I am here to
Yeah,
present.
in that state, other city employees are facing furloughs and possible termination just because of COVID and the long-term effects. And so I think that's one of the main concerns that's going to be brought up here today.
Years 2021 and 2022.
I don't know. This is, maybe you can tell me if I'm racist, but I think my main concern today is the fact that the only black person on this screen is you, and you're not in that room.
For 2021 and 22.
Yeah, I'm not allowed in the room.
I feel like a black person should have been involved in some of this, maybe. And a white woman's presenting it.
Holiday pay provisions.
What I hope is, I know we're trying to get a lot of people to testify this morning in public comments and those voices. Part of this problem with the collective bargaining agreement is a lot of it wasn't public. We didn't know that it was coming. We didn't know when it would be introduced. We didn't know what would be proposed.
Over to
So that's another concern as we're kind of getting to a place where we want more transparency. What's actually happening with funding here in the city of Denver?
So, well, we know funding is used for this in the city of Denver.
Send the ball to the table.
Pickleball
And
court.
Councilwoman Kinich.
As it should be.
Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Rob Nestor with the Denver City Attorney's Office. I've had the pleasure of serving as the city's chief negotiator during collective bargaining with all 3 bargaining units.
How many black people do you think he talked to before he came up with his list of demands?
Begin by giving you just
There are a few, I'm sure.
of the collective bargaining process as it pertains to
You're so
our
polite.
Police officers.
I have a few, I'm at 3.
I think you're still young, though. You haven't been jaded yet.
No, not completely.
Probably old. That's why I leave the tiger stripes in my hair. Like, I'm not going to take the gray out because I feel like I got to prove it.
The central framework is that there are certain topics or subjects of bargaining that must be bargained over, that can be bargained over, and then cannot be bargained over. Notably, the bargaining unit itself consists of police officers who are at the rank of captain or below. members of the command staff are not part of the bargaining unit.
So you said psychology, forensic psychology.
Yep.
What, can you tell me more what that is? Because when I think forensic, I think dead people.
Yeah, so forensic psychology is the intersection between psychology and the legal system. So anywhere where psychology can have an impact on the criminal justice or civil justice system. So sometimes we work with victims and survivors and victim services. Sometimes we do all the fancy evaluations that you see on TV, like competency to stand trial, sanity assessment. But any way in which we can intervene with the criminal justice system.
That's really interesting, because all this time I always thought forensic meant dead, and you say it means legal, and I feel like that kind of foreshadows the conversation we really need to be having right now on behalf of Black people when discussing the DPD contract for the city of Denver.
Yeah, forensics comes from the term like of the forum. So think about like the Greek rounds and the Greek forums where they used to have trials, and that's what forensic means. So kind of any interaction with the legal system is kind of what we do.
What is, so can you have a forum with no Black people in it?
No.
Okay. So it doesn't really represent, it's not representative then.
Especially when we're trying to do work that is representative of the public of Denver, and there are Black people in Denver.
So you don't have a forum, and then you're not really representing community when you have closed meetings presented by white men.
Right.
Okay. I'm new to all this.
Yeah, and that's what's part of this. I think in the last few months, more and more people have been wanting to get involved and engaged in seeing what's going on in their communities since, there's been increased exposure to police brutality and police brutality. And so when we're coming to the table and asking about the budget, we should know about it. If we're the ones who are paying tax dollars, if we're the ones contributing to our communities, we should know what's going on. And that includes this budget and this negotiation that's happening.
I totally agree. That's what I was saying to Carrie Joy on Monday night. Did you get to watch this on Monday night? We tried to make it fun.
I watched a bit.
Where we were talking about the games white people play. White people love to pretend that they're really, really, really good with money, which is why they have money. And it's always like this performative aspect to managing, like, oh, I can't afford that. Oh, that's really expensive. It's like you drive a Lexus. Why are you complaining about the cost of your massage? Like that. There's also like a tone. I was almost said something ableist and I stopped myself, but you know exactly where I was going with that. So yeah, I feel like, why is this, as a psychologist with the legal system, why do you think most people are willing, why does that cognitive dissonance exist? Like, I'm going to worry about making sure that no one judges me for having money to pay for a massage versus not giving a fuck about where my tax dollars go and how they're spent.
Well, I think a lot of it is that we perceive that it's out of our control, especially when you are from a marginalized group. I teach a public policy and advocacy class in our department, and one of the tasks is for our students to go to either a city council meeting or to a hearing at the state capitol. And students remark in their one-page paper, I didn't even know I could walk into the state capitol. Like, I didn't know I could attend these meetings. And there's so many people in the community who are like that I've run into. So they bank on our ignorance that we can't even enter that space, even though we fund that space. I've had several state legislators come to the class and speak, and they're like, no, you own the state capitol. Like, you're allowed to come in there, you're allowed to speak and have a voice in this process. But we're never told that. So one of the things I'm advocating for is we need to have actual civics education in schools, because if I don't know that I can go into a city council meeting and have a space and that they have to listen to me, then I don't know that I can have an impact on changing laws. So that was something that was new for me in the recent years, new for my students, and then so many in the public, that a lot of people don't know you could just look up the budget and say, hey, why are they increasing spending on chemical weapons that they're using against civil protesters? None of this is stuff that a lot of the public has access to. So I think that is part of dissonance too, that if I can't control that, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the things I can't control. And the things that I can control are massage.
So I'm from rural Tennessee, and we did a lot of civics, because when you're in a small town, like, you kind of, they matter. They impact you really directly. And I was a member, you heard of 4-H?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in 4-H. I love 4-H. So had all the 4-Hers. One of the things that I learned that was my civic duty, and it's something I take really, really seriously, is to inform people about what's going on. And the way I do that, or at least it's been now, and I feel kind of like I've been derelict in my duty, is that they can't stop me from doing anything. And as a woman, I find that really freeing. So I can go to public comment and I can yell at them. And I do that. I can go to meetings and I can heckle, and I do that. And I can really use my voice, because how are they supposed to do their job if they don't know what I think? And I mean, there's probably some privilege in there, but do you think we could get Black people to do that too? I don't mind being the only white woman yelling, but sometimes it'd be fun to have a chorus.
Oh yeah, I think it's a privileged position. Again, if I don't know I can enter that space, then I'm not going to be there. Then the other problem is, especially with state legislator, all of their hearings are during the day. Most of us have jobs. My job is flexible enough for where I can go on occasion and testify. But if you're talking about a person who's working 3 jobs and has kids, they're not going to be able to skip work to sit at the state capitol to wait for 6 hours to testify on a bill that's important to them.
It's true.
So what's really frustrating is when I see the city council meeting, they often say, "Oh, I haven't heard from anybody that this is wrong or this is inappropriate." Yeah, because they can't be here. Or they don't have access, issue that came up earlier, they don't have access to internet. So they can't even email their state legislator about how they feel. So it's an access and a privilege issue.
Oh, 100%. What percentage would you guess of Denverites, I'm guessing you actually know this number, I've seen it, would not have access to internet or would not be able to fill out a survey on their smartphone because they don't have smartphone? People like to kind of make stuff carried a BlackBerry for a really long time. And I'm like, it actually gets internet. It's not a dumb phone. People have like burner phones. That's the thing, because they can't afford a plan.
I don't know Colorado's stat, but I think across the nation, it's much higher than we anticipate. That there is a digital divide. That right now, a lot of people don't have access to broadband internet or quality internet. Even college students who are now on virtual classes, they don't have stable internet. So it's a huge issue across the nation. And I've talked to a couple of people in Congress about free broadband internet for folks.
Under the current contract,
Sorry, I forgot. Sorry.
Digital divide is something else that is, hindering again marginalized communities.
Because the number that the last time that I checked yesterday, it was 40%, and this is something
30% nationwide. So
yeah, 30%,
right.
Yeah, and that was higher in Colorado because of the percentage that we have living homeless and off the grid and on reservations, like protected land. I'm still learning, sorry. But yeah, that was one of my favorite things to throw back at people when they make fun of my BlackBerry. I'm like, what you just said is that you don't know poor people. So there you go. Take that with you. If somebody makes fun of your phone, 40% of people don't have one as fancy as yours.
Yeah, there was a reporter a few months ago when COVID really hit and the stay-at-home order hit. They interviewed a school teacher, and she said she hadn't heard from 3 of her students. And I'm like, where are they? Are they okay? Like, who's checking in on them? If they don't have internet, if they don't have access to phone. And I think so many people forget about that because, again, so many people in privilege, so many people of higher socioeconomic status are on their phones all the time that we think that everybody has them, and that's just not the truth.
It's not true. It just shows the bubble that we live in, that we don't, our day-to-day doesn't involve a lot of contact or needing to interact with people who might not be able to interact with us. So if you don't see it, you don't have any idea how big it is.
We have people getting failure to appear charges right now because they can't make virtual court. Again, because they're unhoused and all of that. This digital divide is something I hope is on the agenda to address in the near future. Because, again, it's contributing to all of this. It's contributing to us not being able to have access to these spaces.
And that kind of leads to another question that I had, because again, I'm not real smart, so I apologize. You're gonna have to walk me through this. But when we make a change like this, like you just said, criminal courts go to Zoom, and we're not considering accessibility, then we say the failure to appear rate is skyrocketing criminals are becoming emboldened, we need more police. My fear is, do we have anything there that's feeding into, because I absolutely see that narrative forming. People are like, we need police because crime, they keep us safe and there's more crime. How often do people like you get a platform to step in and say, actually, and question the numbers that underlie the narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is space to have those platforms. I often tell everybody I can't do all the research, but I think that's going to be something that we examine in the near future. Why is this failure to appear rate happening? And I'm trying to go to more person-centered language, so I try not to use even criminals anymore. Who are these people who are failing to appear? Again, it might be the person who picked up a trespassing charge because they were unhoused and just trying to live and survive. And now you're penalizing them again for a failure to appear because they don't have a smartphone to get to virtual court, or they can't. It's not safe maybe to take public transportation at this time to get to their attorney's office, but their attorney's office is closed because of COVID. So are we even considering these barriers right now? And sometimes the answer is no. And part of a lot of stuff I try to do now more is, how do we tell these people's stories? Because again, in some of our places of privilege, we don't hear these stories. I get to hear them from clients or secondhand from supervising students who are working with clients in the communities when our clients can't make it to session because of a bus pass. So of course they're not going to make it to court. And so how do we tell these stories in a way that is bringing to light some of the issues that are happening? Again, I think that goes to today's discussion too. If you don't know what's going on, again, what can you do about it? And you're going to be angry about it. If we're increasing the budget in some ways 2 years down the line, what impact does that have on education? What impact does that have on housing? Where we're using this money?
You bring up an interesting question too. I was thinking, have you ever called the police?
I don't think so. I've called 911 with a domestic violence situation in the past. Again, I don't know if my intention was to call the police, but somebody needs to check in on this person who is getting assaulted.
Right.
So that's the only kind of firm time I've called, I think.
So when I think about another thing white people do, not that you're not aware of what white people do. White people are not aware that what they do is weird. That what we do is weird. Sometimes I hate white people, so I'm working on it with my therapist. I really am. But another white person thing is to say, I understand that these are the public things, the roads, the schools, the post office, whatnot, but I'm opting out of the schools to send my kids to a better school, to a private school, so I shouldn't have to pay taxes to that private school. Is there a movement somewhere, or maybe should we start one where Black people say, we're opting out of the police and we don't want our tax dollars to go toward them at all, and maybe we can get a voucher program going?
You know, we can say that for so many spaces, right? There's a lot of social kind of safety nets that we don't benefit from. We always hear the myth of welfare and welfare queens. Well, who's the number one benefactor, person who's benefiting from welfare? It's white women. But nobody tells that story, that the COVID relief funds, the COVID nonprofit protection funds, all of those are going to white people. Even though Black businesses are applying, although Black people are applying for all these, again, things that are supposed to protect us. You can say that about healthcare. If the healthcare system's killing us right now, why should I be paying these high premiums every month? Adequate healthcare. So I don't know if that's necessarily the answer, but we need to take a perspective on who are these systems benefiting, and how can we, better reallocate some of these funds to help all.
It's true. I know. I used to actually fun fact, this is true. I used to work in reinsurance, so I insured insurance companies and built out capacity. Don't worry about what that is. It's really boring. But I tell you this, whenever I would say this at dinner parties, which is why I don't talk to people when I can avoid it, other than in this forum, they would always say, something about, what do you do reinsurance? My premiums would be so much lower. They made me buy hurricane, and we don't have hurricanes here in Iowa. It's not possible. I'm like, that's actually not how it works. It's called bundling. That's the concept. Actually, if we took that out, your policy would be more expensive. They just never got it. Cable, if we unbundle the package, it would be more expensive, as people are seeing now. And I'm fascinated by this, that somehow people get to adulthood with this flawed logic of if I did, since I don't, the things I don't use drive up the price, when it's like, no, the big pool is what drives the price down. It's kind of,
and it talks about that culture of
arbitration
not being collectivist.
result in agreement.
I'm willing to pay a higher premium if it's going to help my neighbor. But we don't think like that a lot in this country. What are the long-term benefits? Yeah, I don't drive down I-70 a lot, but yeah, those potholes need to be fixed so people aren't getting in the car accidents, and maybe that's sending my premium up.
Okay.
well, what if your neighbor's an asshole?
I have good neighbors, so I'm okay with them.
I'm just saying, you're obviously a really good person too, but like,
Before we go into
But yeah, I think that's things that we have to think about. I think we have some of this selfishness that happens in our community of not thinking of the other or the underrepresented. Yeah, I'm okay with my dollars going up with the Caring for Denver campaign if it's going to help people get mental health care and substance abuse treatment. Because I know down the line that's going to help all of us, and that's going to help so many people.
so we're getting comments coming in now. Thank you, Tahoe, for sharing. If you're watching this but actually need internet service, here are some resources. But it's also good to know if you know someone who needs access to internet, we can share.
Yeah, pass resources out to families, especially right now with schools going virtual. It's just so needed. We have so many kids who are not having quality internet, who are going to be behind just by virtue of not having quality internet.
Presenters focus on.
I think that they just switched.
I think that it's really important that.
I think I'm going to get called to speak.
Crisis that we're in collectively, communally.
I think that's what just happened.
Should have
Look
been
at
much
that.
more of a public process.
Okay.
I understand the contentions and the explanations that.
Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Public process. When we're talking about something that's like half of the city's budget, it feels like these doomsday slides, painting a really negative picture of arbitration, don't adequately.
I can't believe that happened.
Don't adequately.
Figured they'd see my name on the list and be like,
and what decisions need to be made. So my three asks: one, in terms of a public process, it's truly, by public we mean truly public to community. So not just folks like me with law degrees should be able to figure out how to follow this. If every other committee meeting is recorded and live streamed and announced and archived, then so should everybody. That's really important. Secondly, maybe I should have led with this one. I really object to signing on to a 2-year contract. 1 year is appropriate, and then we should be willing to go from there. And lastly, it's really not appropriate at this time, even if it's a 2.77% raise in that second year, to do an increase in funding. Cuts to lower wage workers are being seen across the board, and I just don't think it's appropriate at all that we commit to increasing this particular contract. So thank you for your time. I would encourage you particularly to insist upon a 1-year contract and to work on making a public process truly a meaningfully public one, recorded, live streamed, announced, just as other committees would be, is what we'd like to see for the bargaining meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Epps. Next up, Mary Fleming.
Hi, my name is Mary Catherine Brooks Fleming, and I've been protesting the police now for 3 months. And I'm a little frustrated that this contract, which I can neither be for nor against because you did it in private, in secret, and didn't allow any of us in, to say, hey, I've been attending these.
Ms. Fleming in the queue.
Oh, sorry. And
Yeah,
yep, here I am.
Good deal.
Can you hear me now? Yay. Hi, yes, my name is Mary Catherine Fleming, and I have been protesting police brutality now for 42 years, specifically here in Denver for 3 months. I testified on behalf of SB 217, which really, from what I can see, isn't being enforced very well. And I'm curious as to why that is not being reflected in this contract renegotiation. I'm also curious why you left the public out of it now that we're engaged more than ever, which is obviously what you guys want, allegedly what you want, what all of you beg for, and what I'm trying to do with my live streams right now. And then you would shut us out. We show up to meetings, and then you get worried about COVID and go to Zoom. My fear is that you're going to become worried about Black lives after you've signed this contract, when they're already, the police are protected enough, but the citizens are not. One thing I demand is that you hold these police officers to the same standards to which you hold the tax-paying citizens who fund this police department and who are dying at record rates, because officer-assisted murder is currently the 6th leading cause of death for Black men. And until that changes, we don't need to do anything other than look at our own police force and ask ourselves, how can we do this better? Because we're failing, and you are failing us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Andrew O'Connor.
How's that?
That's that. Again, they limit kind of the spaces in which we can have a public forum. And it's so important for us to have these voices out here and at the table. Limiting a lot of public comment to a half an hour is just not enough.
You reject this agreement. I don't think that this is in good faith.
Scathing. Thank you.
Like Elizabeth F. said, the 2-year duration of this contract is unacceptable to the taxpayers. And I want to remind everybody that all this is being paid by the taxpayers. I do not agree with
Thanks, Mike.
the assistant city attorney when he said that there's a downside to going to arbitration. I think there's only an upside on behalf of the taxpayers to go to arbitration. The risk he didn't say is that the risk is that the city the taxpayers would get a better deal. Right now, this deal is lousy. I think police officers should be made personally responsible for.
You listen to these every week, by the way?
Racist behavior.
Do I?
Yeah.
And not.
Do you ever watch these?
Unfortunately, I can't every week, but I try to when I can.
I'm not judging you. There was a really good one. I feel like I'm talking about episodes of Law and Order when I do this because I'm like, they make me so mad. So the one 3 weeks ago was the one with Beth McCann, our DA. And I don't know if you happened, that was the one I think I tagged you in after where I was like, wait, you've got who doing numbers?
Yeah, I forgot where I was that week, but so many people were emailing me and tagging me. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, that's because I screamed in that meeting, like, what color is she? This person that's collecting the data, what color is she? That matters. If you're you need the person collecting, data can be biased because the person collecting it, collating it, cleaning it, and representing it absolutely can be biased, which is why we need a backstop from all these white people and the cops saying, we don't have a problem, the data says so. Like, no, we need more diversity in the process of collecting. So I was screaming, you might have been as well, but you probably were like relaxing.
Yeah, no, I was in something chaotic that day. And that's why I was like, why is everybody tagging me and texting me? But yeah, I think I just posted an article yesterday and I talk about this in a lot of my classes, just who are the researchers?
Barbara, are you with us?
Yeah. In my field, if you look at some of the key and seminal articles, they're going to be by white males, which is kind of odd because in forensic psychology programs, it's predominantly women and white women. So again, who gets to do the research? Who gets to do the research? Who gets more and more that it's not research colored. That even NIH has released some of their findings saying, for grants, if you mention minoritized, Black, diabetes,
are they protected from layoff?
People of color, it's not going to get funded or less likely to get funded.
Unfair.
So this is a huge issue on again, who gets access to data, who's able to analyze data, and who gets it out there.
I agree with the other speakers.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Because in that meeting, part of what got me so upset right before she started talking about like the data was bad, they didn't have that much of it, the state didn't collect it, on how many incidences each year. So she's only aware of the ones that have the officer-related incidents that had been referred to her for prosecution, and she had no data on the total number of officer assisted incidences that had not been referred to her, and they didn't collect it or share it. And I'm like, that's weird. So you don't know out of how many people you shot, how many times a gun was fired from a particular officer each year. You have no idea unless they died, and that case was referred to Beth McCann. That's a problem.
That is a problem.
Big problem.
There's so much data that
didn't really think to call on me.
And that's easy to collect, right? Because you get police reports all the time. And so whenever there's a critical incident, yeah, we should be able to mark that and assess it. And I think that data is being collected. Again, just where is it going down the pipeline? And why doesn't our DA have access to the full picture?
Many of you have said
I think it's called the police union because they have their own investigation units. And they only refer it out when it's something too big for them to handle. So
thank you.
I have
next
my
up,
own police
Carrie
investigation
Joy
unit.
Lindell.
I feel like they should leave me alone and I can just do it myself.
Morning, members of council.
And I'm working with a few people now that I may be able to get access to this data. A lot of it is public records. And with SB 217, I think we're going to have even better access to this data. So I think in the near future, we will be able to look at it all and look at it from a critical lens to see where the problem is and, again, which officers are having the most issues. I know there's been talks of like a registry for officers who have had complaints. Again, we saw with George Floyd, the officers who were involved had several complaints in the past. So, could we have prevented this?
Yeah.
The answer is likely yes. If they had, I think one of them had 17 prior complaints.
Without any assessments,
and I think we all should be able to recognize that as a problem. 17 prior complaints. I had that many complaints as a professor. I'd probably have some problems too. At least I'd get a talking to or something.
I mean, yes, because you're a woman, and doubly so because you're black. I'm just saying. There's also a standards thing. Like, have you ever been fired from a job?
No.
Officers of the State Department
I have.
used tactics.
I'm a good employee.
I had to screw up really, really badly though, and it was big. And I got each time I was stealing things, and I got a little more, and they were underpaying me, so that was how I justified it. And I got a little bolder with it. And I think about like looking back now, how much I had to do, or how little I had to take in order to be completely fired, because my one job was to sell things, not steal them. And I'm like, your job is safety, not murder. And I have to wonder, at some point, how many dead black people become statistically significant or significant in general? What kind of math are they doing back there to say we don't have a problem or that we can handle it ourselves?
They will only be cutting about 2% of their funding between now and 2022. Please deny this contract and go to arbitration and use the power given.
Did we just talk over Carrie Joy? Oh, shoot.
On behalf of
Thank you. Next up, Lenny Rush.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lenny Rush.
I'm a mama. Only listen really when people are yelling.
I'm also speaking
Sorry, Carrie
against
Joy.
this contract, and I hope that you will reject it and have it go to arbitration. I think it's a little absurd to guarantee literally anybody a salary raise. I don't know about you, but
And no furloughs when you don't fire.
So that's something that I think should absolutely not be part of our collective bargaining agreement. It speaks to the fact that in the bargaining rooms, which were closed, clearly people.
And I'm
with
sorry to
more
be that
power
person that brings race
were
into
the folks
everything,
who
but I
were
feel
able
like
to
you
ask
can't
for money
leave it
increases.
out
Yes,
because
the
it's
department is
already
supposedly
left
taking
out at
cuts
so
in
many levels or
2021.
unrecognized at so
However,
many
a one-year
levels.
contract is much more
Well,
appropriate.
yeah. Yesterday it was shared that, City Council got together and they've developed like these agreements for looking at different policies and budget areas in the future. And part of that was they need to be asking themselves questions about identity. How will this potential policy or this budget decision affect people of color, unhoused people, immigrant populations, LGBTQ populations? It's kind of sad we're just now doing that, but it's a step in the right direction. That, yeah, when I'm initiating a policy, I need to be thinking about all the unintended consequences of that policy decision or that budget decision.
Yeah.
We might get a worse deal during arbitration.
Do you think they're capable of thinking on that level?
Let's do that. Why not roll the dice?
If we challenge them to it, and so that's another component where we're going to have to hold them accountable. So again, did you consider this population when creating this bill? Did you consider this? And just apply that pressure on them.
Right?
God, you are so good. I'm just a judgy bitch. I'd be like, y'all too stupid. I don't know how to do this. But you have like, you're an actual educator. You're like, I can mitigate that. That's my job.
And maybe, and part of it is maybe you're right. Maybe they don't know how to do it. And we've had those conversations too, again, with legislators who've come to my class. Anybody can run for office.
A homeowner and a tax.
And so you don't have to
with daddy's money and name recognition. Not that we've seen that recently anywhere in America.
Right. So you don't have to have a certain level of expertise in whatever like committee you're on. I can run for office and I could be on environmental committee, and I'm really bad at that stuff. I'm trying to learn more about it and why I should be engaged in kind of environmental justice. But that could happen. I could be on some environmental committee and making decisions about oil and gas and know nothing about that area. So that's a problem. And so, again, I think it's going to take the public and experts to start working with some of these legislators to help them make more informed decisions.
There is a lack of transparency and information.
So what do you think is going to happen today?
Equitable. and transparent.
Who's gonna vote to go to arbitration other than Candy?
Fail to do so.
This is a wild card.
That we are in. Not only in terms of systemic.
I think this is where I am getting jaded this year. I don't know how this is going to go.
So this supposed savings.
I'm hoping that we'll go to arbitration just because there was so much that was ambiguous at this time. City Council wasn't privy to a lot of this stuff that was within some of this agreement. And so I'm hoping that they'll go with the most conservative decision and say, let's go to arbitration. So I'm hoping a majority will just go with that decision today.
Not suffice for
Because I know they do like to get hung up on things. So like you said, it was vague. They didn't have enough details. On Monday night, they got real hung up on a very important detail about the decibel level of the proposed pickleball court, and no one had done that due diligence.
Health and Human Services.
I'm like, but you say this is a community resource. Do Black people play pickleball? And now I think Carrie is going to send out a survey, and I think then we'll know for sure whether or not Black people with cell phones play pickleball. But I bet the answer is no.
With my one experience in going to a pickleball game, it was pretty loud.
You played pickleball. I did not know details about this.
I just observed and checked out the pickleball game and facility, and it was pretty loud. So this might be a critical thing that we need to investigate.
Carrie, I found a Black person who plays pickleball.
I don't play pickleball. I am just a pickleball observer of one time.
And
then you didn't take the job.
I didn't take the job.
Policing isn't going well.
For those who aren't informed, I was on a job interview in rural Texas, and they were showing me the town as what happens with a lot of job interviews to kind of sell the town to you that you want to move here. And one of the things that they took me to was their weekly pickleball game and showed me their friends who engaged in pickleball, told me a lot of the rules. It's really complicated. It's a low net, big like paddle and very complicated. And so yeah, I got to learn a little bit about the sport that one time.
One time. That one time. There will be no repeats.
I don't know. I didn't know pickleball was available here. So
I mean, it will be really soon at that development up at 25th and Arapahoe where they just swept out all the homeless people.
Time after time, when I had the power to do
what do we value? Pickleball over people.
You are some of
that's the name of t-shirt.
With that power.
Pickleball over people. Oh my God, on green t-shirts.
I would, but
I had a parent at drop off this morning when I was taking the kids to school, and she was like, way to go get them on Pickleball. So get the pricks. And I was like, Pickleball. Now I can't call it anything else.
The incredible scholar Audre Lorde, in her essay,
Audre Lorde,
on the transformation of silence into language and action. What are the words you do not yet have? What do you need to say? What are the tyrannies you swallow day by day and attempt to make your own until you will sicken and die of them still in silence? Perhaps for some of you here today, I'm the face of one of your fears. A Black woman, warrior poet, here doing her work, come to ask you, are you doing yours? Thank you.
Love her. Gorgeous.
And this is what I mean. When we can get community together to show up, to know that they have a voice, our voices are so powerful. When do we get to hear voices like that?
For today will be friends.
The reality is the number of people of color who are elected is just so few.
Comments in written form so we can hear your opinion.
No, it's really frustrating. I know that has been what's energized me since all this started. And by all this, I mean, this is not an easy fight. I mean, it's
our speaker in the
not saying that it's harder for me than it is for anyone else. It's not, but it doesn't win you any favors, and it just can make
thank you so much
a lot of trouble.
So hi,
and it's kind of like for what? So I took some time out, had babies.
Why I opposed this contract.
Relaxed. Got tear gas and was like, oh,
financial challenges we're facing as a city.
We're back in it.
Make up the largest chunk
and that has been the most amazing thing ever. It's just the people I've met since this started.
And I know people have repeated this before, but
also a lot of this is thankless, right? So this is stuff on your own time that you're volunteering to have your voice.
And all
even local activists and actionists. It's a thankless job a lot of times. You're in the trenches. You're in the community, listening to a lot of these stories, listening to a lot of these traumas.
Not afforded to the rest of our essential work.
Sometimes not seeing results for quite a while.
A clear message that the
and so that's hard. And it's hard to keep people motivated to engage in this work.
No other city employee.
It really
will
is.
have.
I've said for years, you
Sending
don't
the
come here to
message
make
that the police
friends,
officers are the
but the
most
friends you do
important
make,
part
you'll
of
never
city
let go
fabric,
of.
which is nothing that people
And
have agreed
there's
to
a
or
lot
voted
of
on.
there's been a
Overall,
lot
this
of truth in
agreement
that,
unfairly
at least for me.
disadvantages all
Yeah,
other.
I mean, there's been so many, I moved to Denver 4 years ago now, and there's just been so many incredible people I've met, again, being in the community. So going to events and just chatting with people, or people following up with me after an event, just wanting to reach out and have coffee or have tea. And what you find out is there's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of us out here who are wanting to do the good work and wanting to support our communities. But again, sometimes we don't have the platform of being a city council member or being a consultant to a city council member. So that isolation makes a lot of this tough.
On the right side of history.
Well, now you know someone who really hates city council, and will hate stream it, and has the infrastructure of the business behind her. So if you know anybody who needs a platform like this, please tell them come get on here with me. It's not
Thank you, Mr.
quite
Chair.
the same, but
I am really glad we're having
you
this
know,
conversation. I have questions
they watch
on
us.
kind of two themes.
Yeah, I mean, and there's people who's always watching. That's what I've kind of learned, which is also scary at the same time. There's always people watching in these various platforms, especially since we've gone online so much. So all the Zooms and the Facebook Lives and Instagram Lives. Even if you don't think a lot of people are watching, there's going to be 5 people who are watching who get some message from you. Who are called to action from your voice. And so I think these spaces are.
I think there's some confusion about the absence of these things in our bargaining conversations. So, Rob, I want to ask you a question. So I'm just going to try to oversimplify it to try to help our community. So there are things that we as a city can change unilaterally, which means this council or the administration could change them and does not need to negotiate with the police, does not need to ask their permission, does not need to give, any give and take on this. We don't have to negotiate on it. So I'm going to ask you about a few topics that folks have brought up in the reform realm. And if you can just help me by flagging whether we can make those changes or whether we have to negotiate. And I just think this might be an easier way to understand it than using charter language. So would you just, so I wanted to ask about expanding civilian oversight, for example, and, giving the monitor more power, giving the citizen oversight board more power. Does the council have the power to do that with or without negotiating? Do we need to negotiate over that topic?
Okay, I'll try to be as succinct as I can be. Whenever you talk about change that is outside the realm of compensation and fringe benefits, which are mandatory subject to bargaining, the things that you're discussing, whether they're oversight changes or operational changes, those things are not subject to bargaining. That is not something we need their agreement on to, for example, how we dedicate our resources within the department, or shifting of resources, or focus of future work of the department. That's something that would not have to be negotiated and wouldn't be negotiated.
Right. So I just want to be clear, at the bargaining table, the police union cannot oppose civilian oversight changes, correct?
No.
Great. How about the idea of civilianization, taking positions to be done by police officers and having them be done by civilians instead, or other departments or other types of professionals?
Outside the scope of bargaining.
Okay. What about questions of how many patrol officers there are, how many police officers there are? If there was a desire to reduce a piece of the force or eliminate a piece of the force, do we need to negotiate over that?
We do not.
Okay. And then how about?
I'm sorry.
Yep. How about discipline? I'm just trying to make it simpler for our community, because our language about the charter is hard for them to follow, I think. And so I've gotten a lot of questions about this. So thank you for trying to use this language, which I think might be a little easier. How about discipline? If we want to change the discipline matrix and the penalties for various transgressions, discipline, do we need to negotiate over that issue?
That's outside the scope as well.
All right. So is there any barrier in this collective bargaining agreement to, reform type themes that we've been talking about?
No.
And what would happen if those things were in our bargaining
I mean, I know our charter prohibits talking about many of these things, but I just want to clarify. I want folks to understand the difference between Denver and other cities they're reading about. So other cities that have discipline in their bargaining agreements, other cities, what do they have to do if they want to make these reforms?
I couldn't speak to other bargaining units. I just know that with respect to our police officers, discipline is nothing they can bargain over. That's handled by an entirely different section of the charter, which lays out the processes and who decides what rules will govern the conduct of our police officers.
So my second questions are about the agreement itself then. So I just wanted folks to understand that this is not, this bargaining agreement doesn't have direct bearing on reform, transformation, defunding. It does have, financial impact. And so the questions I'm going to ask are about its financial impact and about the process. First, I want to ask a question about the slide. I think there's been an assumption, maybe a little bit in your presentation and maybe a little bit in the speakers, that if council were to not approve this contract today, that what would be submitted to the arbitrator is this contract. And that's not actually what the process outlines. So can you please be a little more specific?
Can you please explain to my constituents why we can't do the reforms that they say we should do?
Submitted to the arbitrator, when and by whom, please?
All right. What would be submitted to an arbitrator are any unresolved issues. Again, it would depend upon whether or not they fell into the permissive versus the mandatory topic. So, for example, if we couldn't come to an agreement on reduction of the holiday pay benefits, or we couldn't come to an agreement on a 0% salary increase for next year, those types of issues would be submitted to an arbitrator to decide. He would have to select either the city's last offer or the
just kidding. I don't know if that's true.
Issue by issue.
Yeah, I just want you to be more specific, Rob. Who specifically submits to the arbitrator? Can you just be really explicit? It's not just here are the unresolved issues and they're dropped in there by an anonymous person. Please be more specific.
Right. The city would develop its last best offers issue by issue. So we would decide as a collective, what our last best offer is going to be. And I couldn't get into the specifics of that right now because obviously there's going to be some strategy involved when we make those particular offers. But we would come up with an offer. This would be the city's position on, let's say, salaries. This is the city's position on holiday pay. This is the city's position on uniform allowance or whatever else was left unresolved. The union would submit their last best offer, and we would have to convince the arbitrator to accept our offer, but they will be doing the same.
Thank you for clarifying that. So nothing legally requires the city to submit what's in this contract here as our last offer.
It's quite possible that what would be submitted to arbitration would look nothing like what's been negotiated.
And nothing legally prohibits the city from going back to the bargaining table prior to submitting a last offer to the arbitrator, or has any timeline expired?
No, we would continue to bargain up until the time of the arbitration if need be. We could even continue to bargain after the arbitration hearing. The only real time cutoff would be once the decision of the arbitrator is ended.
Last question. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your patience. Can you bring up, or whoever's controlling the slide that compares the 20 and 21 financials? A question about that slide.
Just a moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is also critical and important because
on the left-hand side are a set of things that had concessions in 21.
Right.
And on the right-hand side were salary measures. So for lack of a better word, on the left-hand side were some apples and on the right-hand side were some oranges. What I'm concerned about is missing is the right-hand side for 2022 does not describe what happens to all the apples from 2021. So you say here the effective salary increase for 2022 is 2.77, but I just want to clarify that is just the salary number, correct?
That's correct.
What are the additional dollars that are being restored in the 2022 budget that are not reflected on this slide?
So for example, the suspension of the holiday pay benefits in 2021, that's a $4.6 million benefit to the city in 2021. That would be restored in 2022. The $360,000 reduction towards the retiree health fund, the city's contribution would be restored to its current level, which is, I believe, $1.2 million per year.
So if someone were to try to understand what the full financial impact of the 2022 budget is, they would need to be both, not budget, I'm sorry, but well, cost, maybe that's the better word. The cost of the 2022 budget is both the value of the 2.77% salary increase plus the restoration of all the things on the left-hand side to the tune of 4.96 million, yes?
We could have somebody from the budget office verify this, but I don't know how they account for this through the budget process when they suspend a cost item for 1 year and it's restored in the second year. I don't know how they treat that budget-wise.
But it does have to get paid. Those things would be paid in 2022 that were not paid in 2021. I just want that to be clear to folks. And then can you refresh me again on the value, so the dollar value? Let's just assume it's around 5 million. It's added back in 2022 for all of those one-time cuts being restored. And then what's the value of the 2.77% increase?
$4,424,100.
So the actual dollar value of these things taken in net then is above $9 million, roughly, give or take some change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Restoration of the 5 million and the additional amount for the salary increase in the second year.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So in a time where we're talking about defunding or reallocating money from police, we'll actually see an increase in 2022 without any real change.
I was trying to get away from the charter, but I actually really appreciate the charter and would like to go back to it. Mr. Nesper, can you explain to us again who the corporate authorities are?
Sure. The charter defines the corporate authorities as the mayor and city council or their representatives or designees.
And who was the representative or designee for city council in this bargaining?
During the last 3 days of negotiations, it was Linda Jamison.
So you say during the last 3 days, did the bargaining start without one of the corporate authorities being city council present?
Yes.
Is that how negotiation typically happens, with an absent negotiating party?
No, it was an oversight and not an intentional one, which was rectified as soon as it was made known.
But bargaining started without a party that's supposed to be there, correct?
Without one of the corporate authorities, a representative from one of the corporate authorities, yes.
Got it. And so we heard in the testimony that this $5 million savings in 2021 is less than 2% savings over 3 years.
What a miss.
So there was no savings.
Yeah, City Council is a corporate authority that's supposed to be at the table for the collective bargaining, and they were not present until the final 3 days of corporate bargaining, or the collective bargaining. And so we're just wondering why. Why weren't they present? We were told it was unintentional.
Everybody, if you have to pay it back in the third year. So a 2% savings over 3 years that ends up getting paid back in the
by
third
2022, we'll actually be increasing the police budget about $8 million. So I made a comment to the audience. I said, in a time where a lot of community is asking for defunding or reallocating money from law enforcement, we're actually going to be increasing it 2 years down the line.
All city agencies.
Yep. That's a fun thing about math, right? Cost savings isn't necessarily savings.
What we were
Zero isn't always zero.
The negotiations.
No, and that's what Councilwoman Kanish tried to explain, that the PowerPoint was actually a bit misleading, that it's zero for this next year, but then that zero comes back the following year. So it's cost saving the $5 million for 2021, but that $5 million comes back in 2022. So again, if you weren't, and I made the mistake, I didn't read the PowerPoint right because it wasn't in there. That was misleading.
Yep, very.
So that's part of this, why I'm campaigning for education. A lot of the things that are written, and that's why companies are trying to put everything in layman's terms. All of this is written to confuse us, to make sure we don't know who's accountable for what, to make sure we don't know where the money's going.
Great segue. Great segue. And I'm going to go through these pretty quick because I have a few of them. They are subject to layoffs. So there are 14 items under mandatory subjects for bargaining. Can you walk me through our agreements on 10, 11, and 14 under 9.8.3 section B in mandatory subjects? That would be the duration of the collective bargaining agreement. At number 10, why did we pick 1 year? I mean, 2 years instead of 1 year.
Yep.
That was the term that was negotiated by the parties.
Why?
That's what was
right. That's what I've been saying.
Negotiated agreement was a 2-year term.
Was that our offer or their offer at the very beginning?
I'm not sure I want to go into great detail of what transpired in the negotiations.
There's no pleading the fifth in city council, motherfucker.
So where in the charter?
This is not a forensic meeting.
Negotiations are
right.
We're a public agency, not a corporation or some organization with secret sauce. And so with teacher collective bargaining, that's public. Why do we not have public collective bargaining? I don't see confidential in any part of the charter here about the collective bargaining.
From the top. Can't answer why that's the
case. Even my husband's like
cheerleading in the background.
Well, he's never heard her before to get like why I'm so in this. And I'm like,
in fact, wouldn't it allow the city council to create a very public process if we so choose?
Right.
Why would city council be public? I don't get it.
I can answer that
police
union. I can only speak to what the practice has been historically, but I can't speculate as to what might happen should we make these open to the public.
So let's move along to number 11 in that section.
Let's do it, Candy.
Procedures and notice relating to the layoff and recall of police officers, but not the decision of whether to lay off or recall. Can you talk to me a little bit about that mandatory bargaining subject and where we landed with that? What did we get out of that one?
That was not something that was a topic of discussion this time around. The procedures and notice relating to layoffs or recall of police officers, something that's set out by Civil Service Commission rules. It's never been something that's been included in any previous contract. It wasn't something that was discussed this time around.
It's not a mandatory subject.
It is, but unless one party or the other brings it up, it's not discussed. And neither party brought up procedures and notice of layoffs.
So I thought that was actually how permissive subjects work. If the parties agreed, then you bring it up. But I thought mandatory subjects must be gone through no matter what.
Who's this guy talking to?
I think it's a union rep.
That's not the case. There's nothing currently in the contract.
No. It's police union rep. They're talking about the closed door meetings, and she is like grilling them the way city council should do, and it's glorious.
It's not something that was raised by either party.
Is that a violation of the charter? Since the charter lists that as a mandatory subject?
No, it's the fact that you don't discuss any one of these topics doesn't mean it's a violation of the contract because you didn't discuss it.
First rule of the contract is you don't talk about the contract.
Bargaining according to the terms in the charter.
We did bargain according to the terms of the charter when it comes to mandatory and permissive subjects of bargaining.
Well, one, you guys started in bad faith without a party there, but we'll go down that rabbit hole.
Yes,
so
you did.
Tell me a little bit about the permissive subjects that were brought up. Did you guys consult with our city council representative? Did you have a list of things that you wanted to bring up that were denied by the other agent? How did that work?
The only permissive subject of bargaining that was addressed this time around was in the category of non-pension benefits for retired officers and their dependents. The city's annual contribution towards the retiree health fund falls in this category. Yes, that was discussed.
You need to play poker, Dr. Anderson.
Yes,
I'm tell you what, you just got the best poker face like ever. Oh my God.
I've been told that.
You were so good. I can't hide
Talk a little
anything.
bit about section 9.8.7.
Thank you.
All issues submitted to binding arbitration. The last two sentences say that any agreements reached within the 15 days
I
follow.
think we have collective bargaining coming up for a couple other city employees, like firefighters. And again, where do we want to put our value in? Especially since we had the wildfires this year, and we know that our firefighters are going through so much and exposed to health problems. Several of them got COVID while fighting the fires. So are we going to be going up for them in the, in the same way? Probably not.
Yeah.
And so again, this is why we need to be thinking about the long-term consequences of this. Because if I don't see a raise for them, in the next 2 years, support for them in the next 2 years, I'm going to be concerned.
Yep.
Clear loser with
100%.
every issue. And
my kids go to DPS.
Yeah.
I got real involved in those negotiations. And by involved, I mean hooting and hollering absolutely everywhere I could, only to realize that, like, whoa, DPS is really.
Got it.
It's
and
super.
Final request, it's not a question, but if
Which,
you guys
because
could
of
give
those
us an
bonds
analysis
that were issued in
of
2010.
the settlement costs we're facing related to the hundreds of investigations of brutality that are moving through the process right now, that would be helpful to know before we vote on this.
Yes, Lord.
Thank you, and Councilwoman, if you have more, please raise your hand again. Thank you. Councilwoman Black.
Did he just tell her to raise her hand?
Yeah, if she has more questions.
Did you just tell her to raise her hand?
You're muted, Ken.
Hello. Sorry about that.
He just told her.
Discussion and input. I've heard from hundreds of people who have a wide variety of opinions on this matter. So I'm really looking forward to discussions about this and really on safety in general and reimagining the police. I know other council members are participating in Pastor Davis's efforts to reimagine the police, as I am, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation. That said, I just have some clarification questions. There's more budget related. So Rob, I think I'll give you a break. It's my understanding that the police did cut their 2020 budget by 7.5% like other agencies did. Is this true?
Good morning, Laura Walker again. Yes, so the department did submit forward budget reductions for the 2020 budget, and we can get a list of what was accepted from the budget office.
Okay,
I'm not letting that go. That was awful.
Laura, I've heard from a lot of people who object to increasing the police department's budget. Is the Department of Safety requesting an increase in the 2020 budget, or 2021 budget?
So we're still going through those, the 2021 budget process at this time. And so this Department of Safety has been asked, just like every other city department, to submit budget reductions for 2021 as well.
So you are anticipating requesting less money, not more money?
Yeah, we're still going through that process now. So.
Okay. And then can you clarify the value of, maybe this isn't for you, Laura, but maybe someone from the finance office. So CSA employees.
I'm not getting over that anytime soon. Raise your hand if you have more questions.
That was similar to taking a 3% pay cut. And so I'm just curious, this $5 million reduction in the DPD budget.
Especially after she said she had a series of questions and was given the platform to do so.
Is it
similar to them taking a pay cut?
You're so smart. I'm so glad you're here and coherent, because I'm just like, kill it with fire.
So the budget office calculated a 3.1% cost of what the salaries are for police.
Everybody's like ping me right now. Raise your hand. Is this the classroom? I'm like, yeah, I know.
So that's good to know. And then I've had emails from people suggesting that police officers receive incentives for arresting people and giving tickets. Is that true?
It's going to get a little video of this.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. I just wanted to make that public.
You told
and I guess my last question is for Rob.
Told her to raise her hand.
Rob, I know the fire department has,
the councilwoman, if you have more questions, raise your hand.
Their contract, they voluntarily stepped forward because of the budget situation. Is this common for agencies to do this, or for the union to do that, to step forward to voluntarily help the city out?
Is it common for unions to help the city out? Almost as common as it is for corporations to help the city out.
Proactively to help us address the budget situation, and you're exactly right. The fire union has done that. I think that it was simply a matter of timing as it relates to the police union that we began negotiations about the time that the economic crunch really hit us. But they did reach out to us even before then, to recognizing the fact that we were going through some dire financial times, and express their willingness to help out as well. And I think that was borne out by
I hear you guys. I hear you.
Agreement.
I can't give Candy the floor back. I'm not actually like in the meeting.
My last question is related to that. So a lot of people are upset that this is a 2-year contract and not a 1-year contract. And we have a letter that we received from the police union stating that should the city still be in a dire financial situation next year, that I don't have it in front of me. I think it says all we have to do is ask, and they will come back to the table. Is that something you've seen before?
Yeah,
and
politely.
When that happens, do they actually renegotiate the contract?
I've never seen anything in writing like that before, but that's been our experience with the unions, is that they are partners with the city, and they are more than willing to work with the city in times like this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Sawyer, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kendra just hit my question on the head. So I was going to ask about the letter we had received from the union regarding renegotiation after that first year, if we're still in the...
I like the comment that the city council needs to raise its hand to negotiate.
Specifics about what that looks like, right? So has anything like that ever happened before? I guess we are looking at that now with the fire department, but...
Thank you, Chelsea. I'm glad you're here. You're a sharp cookie.
Is that we ask them? Is that is there something specific? Is there a number? Is there a threshold? What does that look like?
There's no threshold per se, but when we are in times like this, it's no secret, right? And so it's not unusual for the union to make the first reach out, or for the city to make the first reach out. But I've not experienced in the last many years an unwillingness with the PPA or our firefighters or our deputy sheriffs to at least engage in negotiations to see how we might address fiscal issues mid contract. And you're exactly right. That's exactly what's happening now with our firefighters. They're in the second year of a 3-year deal, but we are working towards amending their current contract to help out the city in these times, just like the police officers have done.
Okay, and it's my understanding the firefighters came to us and said that they would be willing to, and they offered to do that because of the hard times, yeah?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure that was on record. Okay, so
Thank you.
Some of our speakers brought up a really
sorry.
good point around our other employees who are career service, right? So what are the laws around career service when it comes to, or when it comes to furlough days, losing pay, things like that?
How about you? Do you get furlough days when you lose pay? What's it happening to?
I am concerned.
You're a DU, right?
About the message that this sends.
We're trucking along right now.
If we are saying, I am concerned that this sends the message that everyone should unionize because that's the only way to be, to get a good deal in times like this. When it comes to fair pay, because the city employees that are career service are getting furloughed, they're losing a lot of money. They are, having to not get paid. They are, Friday's the day off for everyone. And meanwhile, our officers are getting, a quote unquote potentially guaranteed 2.77% raise in the second year of this contract. They are making, they are foregoing time and a half for regular pay on their holidays. And I recognize that and appreciate that in this contract, but I'm concerned about the message that sends. So I'm curious about what those kind of rights and regulations are around career service.
Okay, well, as far as collective bargaining rights, career service employees do not have any of it. That's something that's been granted to our safety units by
Do you understand
charter.
that question?
It would require a charter change,
Charter change.
in order for career service employees to have collective bargaining rights. And I won't speak to the advocacy of being unionized or not.
So I guess really my question is here, because I'm kind of a conspiracy theorist. We saw you're trying to give a layup to Candy since she wants that charter change.
As furloughs and layoffs.
It would be nice, but I'm looking for anybody to be helping our girl out,
By the personnel rules promulgated by the.
I think that's what some of it's coming down to. If we, community is wanting some of our demands met, we're at a standstill until we have some of that charter change, which gives us more power to actually voice, what we want to do.
Who are career service, that if we were to approve this contract, we recognize the message that it sends to them, and we acknowledge that that's not okay, and we acknowledge the position that it puts them in, and we appreciate their work too.
How about communicating with the
I
citizens?
can't speak to that. Maybe someone else can.
Yeah, is there anyone on the line who could talk to that?
Candy, you could do it.
No.
Let her speak.
Okay, we can put a pin in that one. Just curious if maybe the administration had acknowledged that issue at all in this situation. Okay, I will leave it at that and let my colleagues go ahead. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Pro Tem Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have questions, I think, both for Rob and Laura.
Joy!
The budget cuts were brought up.
You said you were busy, so I had to go find making new friends.
Inclusive of civilian salaries.
And good news, I found one black person who plays pickleball.
Required to take
so you can still do your survey though, Carrie Joy.
I've got from
I'll have to retell my pickleball story to Carrie Joy.
About a month ago, that the Department of Safety reported the police department alone cut $10 million.
Yeah, Carrie Joy, I don't know. I'm not over that yet. I'm salty AF. Raise her hand. I know he was probably thinking like in Zoom. I don't care. You need to think about how that sounds to people listening. You have to cut that part out for my kid later.
How much of that? And you can get back to me later.
She makes me cut out the Candy speaking parts after the bullying session. She was like, "Can you just like? I just want to watch the good parts." I'm like,
versus how much
"Hey, baby."
Ops or services and supplies.
I'm gonna kill it all with fire.
I'm sorry. So I can answer that right now. So that's $9 million included. It did not include any cost for the furlough days. It did include freezing some CSA positions, so just not filling those positions, so the salary savings associated with that.
Who dat?
But it did not include the cost of the furlough days.
Laura Wiltshire.
Do you know offhand how many non-sworn personnel DPD has?
I can get that number to you.
Okay. How come it wouldn't have been included their furlough days in your 2020 savings?
Those are included more at the citywide level, and so were not included in the budget reductions that we submitted.
Okay. So you're showing that's okay. DPD doesn't have a huge services and supplies budget compared to its personnel budget.
Mm-hmm.
Did 10 million then, I guess maybe get me the breakdown in terms of vacancy savings versus what came out of, because I think what I'm seeing reflected in Murphy's presentation was a 13 million.
If you and Candy are texting each other right now, I might explode. That's fine. We're both looking down.
We're not.
We can absolutely get you that breakdown.
Okay.
Raise your hand before you text me.
The bargaining.
Well, now that we know the city council's got to raise its hand before it can talk to PD.
I have a really good understanding of the floor that you talked about. If this has to go to arbitration, so we wouldn't walk in. The city wouldn't be able to walk in with the last best offer of cutting 3% from personnel as our offer. And can you explain why that is?
I'm not sure I'm exactly clear of your question. Are you asking, could we go to an arbitrator? Let's say that one of the issues we could not resolve was salaries. Could we not go to the arbitrator asking for a 3% salary reduction? We could.
Okay. We couldn't, could we go in? I'm sorry, go ahead.
But whether or not we could prove up to the arbitrator that was a reasonable offer is another matter.
Okay, that's helpful. Can there ever be a change to the floor of the either the contract or the charter that sworn officers are subject to furloughs?
If you want to change any charter provision, like the charter floor, established floors for particular benefits.
See, normally I would think that this was lazy if I was a student and this is a classroom, but they just keep coming back to these same three answers. I don't even have to change the captions.
Well, then, again, the PowerPoint they provided, it looks like they omitted so many things. They omitted the furlough. They misled us on, again, this $5 million increase for 2021 will come back anyway into the budget in 2022. And so now we're, again, seeing all the gaps that are happening that we might not even have a decrease in 2021.
Not great.
Now you teach.
I do. So
I gotta ask, do your
talked about
students give presentations to you?
A number of making
the
negotiation.
It had this many mistakes, would they pass?
And
no. A lot of our presentations, again, you have to cite your sources and back it up and make sure it's factual. And
to waive privileges, but I will say that when it comes
especially
to
since some of my classes are, let's make sure we're presenting things as if we're presenting it to the public.
For the charter,
well, I'm afraid that standard just dropped, Dr. Anderson.
Or any sort of negotiation process throughout the city.
Careful there. It's kind of like acting presidential.
Table for a reason, because we are trying
to
in the best interests of the community and the city, and we've believed for quite some time that we do that by keeping the process confidential. We have a code provision that explicitly exempts from open meetings the negotiation of contracts, because we don't always want to disclose our bargaining positions. So while it's possible, I think it's been decided for some time that we're going to get something better for our community if we keep the process confidential. But certainly, there's room to have those discussions.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Kirsten, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes. I'm sorry, this is Kirsten Crawford, Legislative Counsel. I had raised my hand at the time Councilwoman Sudabaka was.
If that were the case, why don't we have non-public ones for teachers?
Have an opportunity to jump in. So sorry.
Go ahead, Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Some people would disagree, okay?
Maybe to Rob, I'm not sure if you have information on this. One of the speakers brought up the state bill.
I don't think so. It's been a softball every year. Then it got
was there
canned.
or is there an impact to our collective bargaining process
right
from that bill? Is there any impact from that bill?
There is not, because mandated by the new law doesn't fall within.
You want to catch her up?
No, this will make it even worse for her. I care about her well-being.
I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Where do you teach kinder?
Thank you.
I've got a kindergartner.
Council President Gilmore, you're up.
Oh God.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Brace yourself, Rebecca.
Questions for you. In the presentation, you had talked about on June 30th, there was a phone call.
The main thing you need to know, Rebecca, is you need to raise your hand before you talk to
President for that phone call on June 30th.
Right.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant you were a teacher, Rebecca. I
was a
misunderstood.
phone call just between myself and the chief negotiator for the union. It's formality more than anything else, because the charter requires that you begin bargaining no later than July 1 of the last year of the contract. So we kicked off negotiations just for the phone call, saying we've officially opened up the negotiations. It lasted maybe 20 minutes.
And after
20
that,
seconds, I should say.
the phone call lasted 20 seconds?
20 seconds, yeah.
Okay. And how many people were on the call?
2 people, me and the lead negotiator for you.
Okay.
It's just a formal opening of negotiations, just so that we can start the clock running in conformance with the charter, which says start bargaining no later than July 1. So we kicked it off on June 30th.
Okay, and so once that phone call happened between you and the union's representative, there were 13 days that passed. Because if I just want to confirm I have correct that the negotiations started on July 13th.
I took 2. That's why I sent my kids back to school.
Okay, so 13 days passed, and on July 13th, if at that July 13th meeting, who was present at that meeting?
At that meeting were representatives from both parties. I can't tick off the names of everybody who was there for the union, but there were representatives from the city attorney's office.
Trying to make it fun and keep people engaged. So thank you. I feel seen. It's not that I need to be looked at, but this is a thankless job. This being a jackass in public thing, and finding people with really smart people with credibility who kind of like want to lend me some of that. So I appreciate you, Dr. Anderson.
Alexander girl.
Oh my God.
So on July 13th.
I know, I have it a letter of name. It's hard.
I have to go back and look.
Raise your hand before you correct me, all right? I'm sorry.
Okay. And how long have you been working along collective bargaining within the city, Rob?
I think my first exposure was probably.
Yeah, go ahead, hit me. Oh yeah. I was gentle.
I began serving as the city's chief negotiator, I think, in the fire negotiations in 2008.
Okay, thank you. And then since there wasn't.
Everybody watching is really getting a sense of how secretive this whole process is what we learned today. Like, they're not going to make it public. City council didn't have a rep at the table for a long time.
To that,
defunding the police, Rebecca, is what we're finding out. Is that in 2 years the police budget's going up even more. And so again, just
outlining to have
everybody is out marching and out doing so many different actions to bring awareness to why we should be defunding police, and it's not being heard at any capacity. Any attempts to negotiate defunding are being kept in secret.
Yep.
And so
and everything that we throw out
14th,
there,
how long was
or
that
that Candy
meeting
threw out
scheduled
there,
for?
glorious goddess that she is. She's going to inherit Wakanda
My
someday. It's
recollection
going to be
is
amazing.
initially it was a master session, so I'll have
But
to verify that.
Okay.
everything, like
So
everything
about
that she
4
said, they were like,
hours,
that's outside the scope.
time
That's outside the
frame
scope.
on the
We literally
13th and
can't
then on
do
the
that.
14th,
That's in the
so
city
8
charter.
hours
So next
potentially,
time when
maybe a
Candy
little
says we need
less
to change the city
of
charter,
those being
please pay
together.
attention, y'all. Show up and yell.
Customarily, I just am curious if
Is she literally sipping
an
tea right now?
outlined representative,
God, I love her.
and it was
A big old
acknowledged.
mug.
So casually through a bent straw, no less. Like,
On the 13th,
with you, girl.
why was the negotiations not stopped
You need to get me these straws.
to rectify the situation?
It makes everything so much sassier.
Right?
At that, it was very preliminary in nature. I'm trying to recall back if it was on the 14th.
This will be a poll for the chat. What kind of tea is Candy sipping?
Right? And where did she get that straw?
Of the budget situation, but it was very preliminary at that stage, and there was actually nothing that was agreed to or anything.
I'm waiting for her to pick it up again so I can get a good
It was very
screenshot.
preliminary. The vast majority of the negotiations, the real meat of the negotiations, took place the following week.
So, okay. But customarily, city council would have a representative around the table to agree upon or ask questions of these preliminary topics, correct? Historically, that's what would happen?
Historically.
Okay.
Not.
My next question.
We don't have to.
Is also for you, Rob, around what transpired on July 24th, which was a Friday. And
you know what she probably is? Because she's Candy. And she would. She's like, I don't need caffeine.
On Friday, July 14th, that was a massive shift in.
Oh shit! She did it again, and I missed it. She's too fast with that. That straw.
President of council, I want to.
Can we talk for a second about how Chantel Lewis? There's a bad bitch. I love her.
July 20th.
Whew.
And
I did not catch much of the live stream last night because I was choking on the fumes from all the manure that we had to inhale when Sandoval was on the Brother Jeff show.
Yeah, I was watching the Brother Jeff and then the after one. Yeah.
It was just a lot, you know. There's only so much. I've got 4 kids, man. It's already a lot of crap in my house. There's only so much I can be asked to ingest. So after that, I was like, I don't know that I can handle this. But I caught the last bit. I got in right as Chantel Lewis was speaking, and I was like, oh,
why?
That was worth it. That's all I needed. God, she's amazing.
Specifically to slow this down.
There is a woman who needs a bigger platform. I love what she's doing. I think it's very important, but like, I want to put her. Can you just talk everywhere, please, Chantel Lewis of the RTD, District 6? Oh my God.
I think we all need to support her because she needs it. She's saying the things again that the community is asking for. Trying to create alternative solutions to prevent violence against people in our communities who are riding RTD and public transportation. It was just sad that that proposal didn't get the support that it should have.
No. Well, I watched that meeting too, and that was when I was like, we need to live stream this so people can see. Because when they know no one's, or when they think no one's watching, or they turn on a Zoom and there are like 14 participants, they just act with impunity. And that's not how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, a lot of people are asking, like, what should I do during this time, especially our white allies? What should I do? What should I do? And I keep saying show up, and that means to these spaces. So even if you don't know enough, watch a couple weeks. You're going to pick up on everything, and you're probably quickly going to know more than some of the people in these positions. And then, again, use that public comment to get your voice out there and speak up. If we don't have people backing Chantel and backing others, we're going to get the results that we got, which are unfortunate.
And so,
It's true.
Rob,
You know what's not
my last
unfortunate though?
question
The
is,
person who runs the Wall of Moms Denver
for council
Twitter
to be
account.
fully represented in,
I love her too.
and in good
She's-
faith. You've mentioned
Have you
a few
met?
times through this that you were representing
Probably not yet.
the,
She better know me at some point.
Well, you know how weird I have been in public, so I think I may have met her and said hi, and then did my weird thing.
I did not think you were weird at all. That was a weird night. There was a legit stalker around who has come after me. He's come after Elizabeth Epps. He's come after Tay Anderson. He's come after multiple people. I cannot blame you one bit for being like, listen here, white ladies, I love your enthusiasm. I just really can't handle you right now. I mean, if you don't do that all the time, I feel like that's a conversation.
Usually I just smile at you and say, thanks, and see you on Twitter.
You're very kind about it. I was just like, I love your work. You're like, I loved your TED Talk specifically. I'm on the board of the Blue Bench.
Thank you. Thank you.
Neither.
So when your name, if I was aware of your TED Talk separately from all the rest of this, so like I got reactivated,
Before I go to
and then my
Councilman
kid
Flynn,
got me into city council, which again, all totally separate, but all just kind of mushed. And I was like, oh, it's the woman from the TED Talk, because people retweet that I watch retweet you a lot.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, down like face first.
Sorry, I wasn't able to.
Everything that you do, and I'm like,
my
oh,
hand up and get
amazing.
Promoted earlier.
We
but,
need a bigger platform for her. And Chantel Lewis, so many great women.
The impacts of our fiscal challenges on CSA employees and trying to find ways to give them some reassurance.
We start doing the candy lane.
We do have collective bargaining groups, and I just flag a few things. I think first and foremost, the 8 furlough days that CSA employees have had to take in 2020 amount to what is effectively about a 3% salary reduction. And that is the target that made up trying to get to that $5 million in bargaining. That equates to about a 3.1% decrease.
Can I nominate Amanda Sandoval to check that math for us?
So it was in effect trying to mimic or equate that same.
That's what she's doing right now.
That CSA employees.
Did you see that last night too?
I would say too that $5 million target to prevent us
when she almost had her gotcha moment.
That impacts CSA employees.
It went.
So if we're not able to,
so when you watch a really good court drama and like an amazing cross examiner, my dad is really good on the cross. My dad's an attorney. But they kind of like start, they're really nice, and then like the tempo goes up, and then it's like boom when it comes out. So she was asking questions that way. That was, and I'm like, oh, what she? Oh no, her math is just wrong. Oh my god! And I had to hide. It was really
2020 is worth a citywide furlough day
kind
worth
of
about $2 million.
Not a great moment.
$5 million may not sound like a lot,
but then she wouldn't apologize for the racist thing she said, so I have to keep bringing it up.
Days that CSA employees are having to take, it is a big number.
I think we're invited for tacos and tamales. Is what
other things to take some burden off of CSA employees, like eliminating the cost.
Who knew tamales could do so much
for the rest of the year? And we'll continue to look at ways to help.
I had tamales last weekend, and I did feel better.
So don't have the benefit of bargaining.
I feel better when I go to Sanctuary Market.
Taking these impacts.
I like everything that they have.
I think you'll also see.
Rebecca wants us to talk about what's happening and what's the outcome.
It's going to be the outcome of this is called the status quo. That's French for no change. Just kidding. It's probably Latin or something. I didn't have to take. Do people still study Latin? I don't even know. What's going to happen is that everybody's going to act real concerned because this is a performance. This is a circus, and they are clowns, except for Candace Baca, who is the real deal. So everyone's going to pretend to care, ask all these hard-hitting questions to represent the people, only then to turn around and say.
We still need to vote on
because this is what the police came in saying, and this is what city council is going to go out saying. We literally can't do what you're asking for. So without changing the city charter, and then Candace Baca is going to say, well, let's change the city charter then. And then this guy's going to say, woman, raise your hand. That's a big deal. Don't give people ideas. And then we're going to have more of the same and have to protest some more.
That's correct, right?
Yeah, I think the best case scenario is the 1 year. And that'll give us time for actually amending the charter next year. Again, shout out to Carrie Joy. Let's watch and support her Demystify the Technique. She is giving us all the tips that we need to know in order to make that happen. Again, things I didn't know, so I'm learning from her. And that's what I'm hoping. Let's get the 1 year, and then next year we can revisit this, amending the charter, get what we need, and then that's when we can take the actual steps forward to actually create the change that we want.
Savings.
It's a multi-step process, and we're going to be here for, or I'm going to be here for all of it. Live streaming it, calling them out on being jackasses. Like, we see you and we see what you're doing. The gig's up, y'all.
Okay, so would we be able to present that to the arbitrator? Or
I'm glad he's not wearing a tie today. I was really worried about him. It was really tight the other night. His face was really red.
Submit to the arbitrator anything.
It's like somebody needs to check on Flynn.
What's the charter?
And now he won't let me tag him in things anymore. I guess they figured out how to use their privacy settings. Let's start.
We couldn't propose anything less than that.
So how much of the savings of the $4.95 million, how much of the savings is that holiday pay reduction?
4.6 million.
And then the rest of it is the retiree health benefit.
That's correct.
Is the retiree health benefit something that could be presented to the arbitrator?
Not unless.
I don't know. I don't want to give him that.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
If our position was,
I mean, I understand it's a figure of speech, but if this is a competition, who do you think's the worst? Dr. Alexander. I'm going to keep saying that till I get it right.
From 4.6.
I don't know.
Okay, so we would lose.
Concur. Concur. Survey says.
At least through this.
At least he's getting oxygen to his brain when he loosened the tie.
It would be
maybe that was a change that was needed.
In the next calendar year through arbitration.
I mean, all this is bad, especially the last few weeks of again.
Just to be clear,
not listening to the community, and I think some of that is how some of these council people define their community. Like, who are you actually talking to? When we're getting there was a survey talking about defunding the police, and that was thousands of people who completed the survey. For the accusations to be like, oh, but I don't know about community and what they think. It's like, here's the data, but you're ignoring it. Or again, if you're talking only to your circle of friends,
there have been other
who are from the same background as you, then yeah, you're not going to get a sense of what the community actually wants or is actually saying. How many of these people went down to the protest or talked to protesters? How many people actually came out and talked to some of the people who are outside the city and county building talking about their demands? Not many, because they hid, because they were so afraid of these people who were speaking their voices.
That's similar to fire.
So I think that's part of this problem when we're talking about all these buzzwords of diversity, equity, inclusion. You're not including people outside of your circle to hear a variety of different opinions, and so you're ignoring the voices of the marginalized in these conversations.
What happened in those other cases? I think the president of the PTA.
So, Rebecca, I want you to know
they've engaged in these
it's not too late.
Reopenings
unless you're in District 9. Then if you can move, we can support you
involved with
to run.
leadership in the union. Were you involved in any of those, and what was the outcome?
I was, and as I recall, the reopening negotiation.
And now it looks like you're texting with Sandoval.
How do we?
Wouldn't that be funny?
It would be hilarious.
They were.
It's not too late. There we go. Carrie Joy. James.
Months or
it's not too late.
11 and a half months.
You're 8?
That
District 8. Sorry, it took me a minute. I'm like, you're old enough. What?
That's predominantly.
Yes, what Carrie said.
Contracts and salaries.
Can you believe that Monday night 4.5-hour conversation was the first time I've ever really talked to her?
So what PPA has said that they would be.
I tell people they try to keep some of us apart.
Depending
so like, I haven't had like a one-on-one conversation with Carrie Joy until this year, or didn't even meet Candy until like a few weeks ago when all this was going down. So I talk about keeping I think some of it's strategy to keep these powerful women and femmes away from each other.
Because once we get in a room, magic happens.
Right.
PPA and every other student.
Let's do it. I will help you.
Mr. Chair, that's all.
It was brilliant. You were brilliant, Carrie Joy. I can't wait to do that again. My husband even went back and watched some of it based on what your wife was doing here in this meeting. He was standing behind me earlier. I don't think you were on yet, but he was standing behind me earlier, and Candy was doing her bad bitch thing of like with the questions. And he, who never pays attention to anything when I'm working, we just get in our own zones. Like, this is my dance face. This is your dance face. He was like, whoa, what's she doing? Yes. yes, came over and watched, and now he went to take a walk, and he's watching our live stream from Monday night now. That's how good, that's how much, that is winning the wife lottery. FYI, Jesus loves you.
Very different circumstances. We had a 200.
Oh yeah, shout out to Rebecca's documentary coming, Running with My Girls.
That's right, Running with My Girls. Can't wait.
Yep, make sure you still donate and support that documentary if you can, because we need that. We need to see those stories and help amplify other voices.
100%. Is there? Go ahead and throw a link up, Rebecca, if you want to. Are you still you still have the Fundly?
I know she's still taking donations somehow.
Still taking donations? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Go ahead and throw that in there, please. And then Walla Moms, if you wouldn't mind helping us amplify it. It's a really, it's going to be, you'll see. You'll see. So my hope, Walla Moms Denver, is that your study of police unions has been a little more thorough than Sandoval's study of land trusts, which she talked a lot about on the Brother Jeff show. And it hurt my heart a little bit because I don't like watching people stumble in public, but it was like, oof. It's like the person, who talks about studying quantum mechanics because they want to seem smarter than they actually are. And they've heard that phrase, quantum sounds like smart people stuff.
Whenever there is substantial movement.
That is a good question. I don't think so, because I think this is a full-time job, right?
I don't know. I kind of heard otherwise, so I need clarification on that.
We take that back to the table.
Oh yes, the Fundly is still active. Go ahead and throw it in there. Go ahead and throw the link in here so we can help you amplify it.
Talking about the $5 million.
We'll get Cody to amplify it. He raised more money last night. That kid's a machine.
That's what we were going to the table to negotiate.
Cody raised $10,000. And you don't know who I'm talking about. There's a reason. He's new on the scene. Just showed up. Goes to the Melanated Mike nights. A couple people got arrested. He raised 10 grand like that was able to bond them all out.
Very nice.
And he got to work again last night too. So yeah, we'll get him to amplify and fundraise for you, Rebecca. Why does that not surprise me?
Right.
That their police officers make 6 figures plus.
And I think that $5 million number was at that time.
And then, can you verify how much?
A varied by jurisdiction, because I know some people are still keeping their full time.
How many briefings did this body?
I don't see this. These guys have so many meetings, so many big long block meetings every day of the week. Like I could be live stream. I could have a TV channel where I do nothing but this, and I'm kind of tempted. But I do actually have business run. But there's so much. I don't see how they couldn't. I don't see how they could have a different job.
Thank you, Rob.
Yay.
And that's another thing that I think hinders like access again and having full representation. We're trying to get people, especially people of color, on these boards and commissions and running for office, but there are some sacrifices. Again, there's some great programs out there that are helping people learn how to fundraise, like Emerge and like the Victory Institute. But again, I think it's one of those things that's kind of mythical. Is it possible for me to run for office? I don't know. And what do I have to do?
Role. That is not what is characterized in the charter. In the charter,
here we go.
I believe that as a corporate authority, we're characterized as a negotiating party. Can you tell us a little bit about why council gets briefed rather than council's city attorney, it being a party to the negotiations?
Yeah, I can say that typically both city council and the mayor rely on their designees, their designated representatives, to participate in the collective bargaining process. In a normal course, it may be that there may be 10 or more days set aside for
just saw this on Twitter. And, I'm definitely a Cedar Bacchus. Me too.
For the mayor to attend each and every one of these sessions, or every member of council.
Some are Marxist, some are Trotskyist. I identify.
In the past,
I identify as a Cedar Bacchus.
Relied on their representatives to.
I love this so hard.
In the best interest of the city, and be apprised of the progress of the negotiations as they occur.
So where is it, in what process or place have we memorialized who city council's representative is, and why do we continue selecting someone that is not actively an attorney and able to participate and negotiate?
Good question.
That you guys will have to answer. I don't know what the processes are for designating who will represent you at the table.
Where do you see, when you decided or noticed that there was a missing party, where did you go look up who you were supposed to contact to invite?
I believe it was our, Kirsten is the one who informed me of who the current executive director was for city council. And I reached out to her immediately and brought her up to speed and made sure that she was available for the remaining 3 days of the negotiations.
The remaining 3 days.
Kirsten not also just immediately get invited since you guys are in the same office?
Can I jump in here, please?
Yes, please.
Okay. Kirsten Crawford, Legislative Counsel. I guess I would just say, and not to be dismissive at all of, you know, the look back on the mistakes and job and communication, which I think we all agree mistakes are made, and you know, COVID and being out of the office compromised things as well. But we have been working diligently to make sure this never happens again. John Griffin, who I believe is on the meeting as well, is now been designated by council leadership as the council representative. I have dug into the history of our involvement, and my predecessor, David Broadwell, was not, it did not play a significant role in bargaining, but over the years, council has had a very strong presence and seat at the table. We had an interim situation where council did not have a legislative services director, and then had
they would have never forgot the mayor's representative.
But we also have really strong foundation.
And the few times I've had a seat at the table, I realized they
John
didn't have me at
proven to communicate
the table
very well.
The different table.
Occur, and so I guess if there's any other additional fixes that need to be made, please let's send them to council leadership, and let's adjust and make this as strong of a role as possible for council going forward.
Real quick question for you, Kirsten. If we chose for you to be the representative to negotiate on our behalf, would you defer to Rob for the negotiations, or would you actively negotiate potentially against Rob if our non-negotiables or desired pieces of the negotiations were in conflict with the mayor's?
I think, you know, we're set up in our office where our ethical obligations are first to the city and then to our client. And so we work for city council directly, and there are times that your interests are not aligned, and we will advocate the way that we are directed to by council as a body, though I want to make that clear that it has to be a majority of council that's directing us rather than, you know, one member. But those are things that we can talk about going forward.
Kirsten, when you say your ethical obligation first is to the city, who is that? What is that?
You know, I am working with Councilwoman President Gilmore to talk through ethics with City Council, but the rules of professional conduct talk about lawyer as a representative for an organizational client. But that does not preclude that City Council interests may not align with the mayor's interests. So we will sort that out as we go and as directed by City Council. And we can dive into that conversation, and we intend to do so soon, actually.
Thank you. I think it was just important to get on the record that the city is not City Council or the people. It is the administration, and that is your primary ethical obligation. So just wanted to.
No, that's not a true statement. But
you said we're your client, and the city comes before your client.
Kirsten, will you please clarify that?
Yeah, so no, I'm saying the rules of professional conduct are set up that our, as city attorneys, Our client is the city, and then the constituents, when I say constituents, the elected officials of the city. John and I represent city council. And so as we go into being a representative in collective bargaining negotiations, we will be looking to council for direction. And yes, we understand at times that the city council interests will be different than the mayor's office interests.
Or the public?
Doesn't clear up a lot, but thank you for that.
Okay.
Yes.
Rob, real quick, who is the lead negotiator or the bargaining agent for the PPA?
This time around, it was a gentleman by the name of Anil Korea.
And what is his role? Is he a cop? Is he what's his rank?
He is a labor attorney.
Okay, and not a cop.
No.
In the past, has it been a cop that is the lead negotiator?
In my experience, it's always been an attorney who has served as a lead negotiator or co-negotiator.
Got it. So they send their attorney, the mayor sends his attorney, and we send our executive assistant.
No, that's not exactly accurate.
I love her.
Staff, the collective bargaining team, representatives from agencies across the city, including representatives.
I'm dead. Oh, the audience is waking up. Here we go.
But there has to be someone who leads them.
They always try to make it seem like we're conspiracy theorists, but all of this, like, you have to think this is intentional.
Than anything else with collective bargaining.
And so last question, kind of a big question.
Yeah.
There is
Candy.
So Sky said that if we don't approve this contract to save or capture the $5 million, that we'll have to make deeper cuts to everybody else. My question for you, Rob, is about that section that didn't get negotiated in mandatory subjects. The procedures and notice relating to layoff and recall of police officers. If we talked earlier about how not all the changes we need to make with police are in the charter, and perhaps layoffs is the way that we defund police according to do the will of the people. But we didn't talk about the procedure for layoffs in mandatory subjects. Can you talk to me a little bit about, is it possible to
how corporations do it? It's efficient.
And if it goes to an arbitrator, is it possible to cut salaries of the police?
Okay. Two-part question. Again, the notice provisions and the procedures for layoffs was not a topic of bargaining this time around, and it's because that is already covered by Civil Service Commission rules. The decision as to whether or not to lay off police officers is not something that they bargain over. That still remains a management right. So we couldn't bargain over who gets laid off or how many people get laid off, or if there's going to be any layoffs.
Right. It's about the procedures.
Right. And that's already covered. So it would be redundant to include in the contract something that's already provided for.
Stop asking questions, woman.
So Sky's statement was incorrect, that we don't have to cut everybody else deeper to recapture savings in the police department. There is a process to lay off officers if we need to capture dollars that way, correct?
I believe what Sky said is entirely accurate. If we do not achieve the $5 million savings through this negotiated agreement, that may have an adverse impact either on city services or personnel or both.
Are we going to fire firefighters?
It's mutually exclusive. Is her statement correct? And it's not possible to lay off officers, or is it possible to capture savings by laying off officers?
I love her. We all love her.
Councilwoman, I believe it's clear that savings can be accommodated by any number of things. One of which would be laying off officers. If you want to follow
Stop
up more on that,
shutting her up.
we're short here, so I would like to.
I would like to kick you in the
on to Councilwoman Kanish
face.
to a vote and decide where we're going from here.
You didn't answer
Thank
the
you.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My personal observation is that for me, this vote is more about my fiscal prioritization of one-time certain savings over the
He's District
potential
6
for longer-term
Isn't
savings.
Chantel
It's
Lewis
about
District 6 for
my
RTD?
level of, is 1 year more important than the longer
Wonder if we
term?
could get her to
Those
run.
are the types of questions
District 6.
I'm weighing. And I want folks
Chantel
to know
Lewis,
that
I want to help
I'm
you
not
get this guy
likely to
out.
support this bargaining agreement, but I strongly believe that those who have weighed those financial separations or those priorities differently, it's not that they are more or less in favor of reform or transformation than I am. So I just want to start, I think that when we have tough votes like this, it is hard on our body. And I want to make clear that I respect that different folks might weigh the financial consequences differently than I do. And so I have a lot of respect that I expect this to be a divided vote. And I think that there's a valid argument for, the sure path versus the path that involves some more risk. And I just, a couple of the speakers in public comment made clear that they don't believe there's a risk of the city ending up having to pay more, and that's just not correct. There is a risk. There is a risk the city could end up paying more. I might be willing to take that risk because I believe it's low, and or I believe it's important to try for greater savings and or greater flexibility, frankly, for year 2. Maybe I don't need that flexibility, but I may want a surer path. So with that said, we have 12 council members here today. Only 7 of us get to vote because only the sitting members of this committee. So I see a couple paths. It's possible
Yes, Carrie
that
Joy.
this bill
Tell us who wants to run.
this committee.
I'm all about it.
And then we have someone who supports it in the awkward position of deciding whether they want to file it directly on the floor, because any council member can do that. Any council member can directly file a matter on the floor. And so that just feels like potentially a lot of drama if that's a likely outcome.
I'm too.
So that's path 1.
I'm shaking. I can't believe
Path 2 is
it's twice. You told her to raise her hand and you shut her
we
up.
really have 12 of 13
You don't
council members
come
here.
at
If
the
this
queen.
bill doesn't have the support to pass
Not
on
like
the
that.
floor, it would be better for the administration and all parties to know that today and then skip that whole drama of filing on the floor, because then we could, we could simply move on.
Drama of filing on the floor. Did you know filing on the floor was dramatic?
That we just voted out on committee.
File was dramatic,
right? So I am unlikely to support this. And so but I also am interested in maintaining, as little distraction, delay, whatever you want to call it, as necessary.
And that's why I got so mad about the pickleball court thing the other night. And I didn't really say it, but pickleball, right? So they didn't.
One scenario could
Dr. Alexander, back me up. When you've got a student in the class who is actually pretty smart, but fakes, is able to fake their smarts up all the way up here, like a B student who can punch above their weight, usually a dude, they will pick some arbitrary thing. And like they'll just pick, like, go to the 9th page of the Google search or some, like, let the book fall open and be like, oh, I found this, and they'll hang on it to try to make you think they actually did the reading when they didn't. That was what I thought of the pickleball court statement, and that's what I'm thinking about Kanish when she speaks most of the time. And everybody else who didn't do the reading then makes it a bigger deal because they're like, oh, I didn't see that.
No,
Pickleball.
Or it was an irrelevant statement in the reading. Yeah, if you looked at the whole context of the reading.
Streaming won't get caught off.
Sometimes I do did you read the next sentence, which says?
Thank you for that clarification.
You get the big picture.
Councilwoman,
you're just trying to find one sentence that wasn't in the cliff notes?
Yeah, I was looking to you a little bit and to the members of the body. We could move this and
look, I'm not the smartest person in any room, and I know that. But I punch at my weight, and I have a real problem with people who don't. I have a real problem with elitists who will throw their credentials down as though they're not to be questioned. Like, who are you to question this? And that's what I see a lot of the time. If you can't answer the question, it's probably because you don't know the answer, not because my question is stupid.
So me?
She does. I wish my daughter did too, but I'm
What
afraid.
Councilwoman Keach said, I think,
I'm afraid of what that would do to the world.
Very apropos, and I think the best course of action, given that this is different than an item that the administration.
That is
just
not
pulled
my
off,
place to say because I'm
the
white,
agenda,
but
because then nothing
she does
will
seem like
happen.
the
It's
type who
already
would get the
been
manager
ratified by PPA. I think it's now
without realizing
clearly
that
in
she
our
is the
court to
manager.
act on it. I think based
So
on
she's
what
kind of like
Councilwoman Keach just said,
a barbecue Becky and a Karen
I
all
think the
rolled
best
into
action
one.
is to move it to the floor where it can be voted up or down, and then move the process forward, whether that's to arbitration or renegotiation.
We feel you. We feel you. I'll try not to bother you
it
with more
stays
whiteness
here,
in
the
your DMs unless
even if it
I make something else amazing like that video
council,
yesterday.
We still have
Yay.
the fact that it's out there.
Me and Carrie join a pickleball tournament.
We're gonna have to do. I mean, we're gonna have to go protest on pickleball court. Talk about the decibel level. We're gonna do a double date, and we also got to take Carrie Joy to a drive-in theater. She's never seen one.
Okay, well,
What?
I know, right?
We have to do that. Bye, Carrie. Love you.
We love you, Carrie,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
and we love your wife.
A question on.
We're not gonna say
is
more,
there
even if we
any
kind of
path
think it.
forward,
Because we really, I mean, your
if
wife
we
is.
don't do the floor.
Let's
Like,
do
I
it.
don't-
Pickleball.
I'm unclear whether or not
I mean, I'm gonna want to hit something with a big old paddle
does anything
when this is
to
done.
the process. We can't reopen it. They've already ratified it. My understanding is we've either got
Earrings
to
coming off.
approve it or deny it. There is no other option. But clarify for me, please.
May I respond, Councilman? My proposal was not that we keep it in committee. My proposal is a choice between voting on it in committee, perhaps it dying in committee, and then it being required to have a council sponsor to file it on the floor. I would not recommend keeping it in committee as an option. That is not a viable option in my opinion. So if I was unclear, I apologize.
So then the clarity I need is how are we killing it in committee?
I don't know that we are. I don't know what the votes are, but there is a scenario by which this has happened in type situations where the committee may not be the same vote count you would have on the floor. So the committee could vote it down. It's a possible scenario.
You know, I love the research. So I just researched pickleball courts in Denver, and there's several.
World if we go that path.
Well,
I'm not assuming what
I wonder how many are in black neighborhoods.
I didn't do that. So we might have to do a charity pickleball tournament.
I think we do. That'll be the fundraiser for whoever wants to take the District 6 seat.
So you're shaking your head.
I am in. I will organize that. Iris Butler is the organizer I've been mentoring. And we will.
Oh, go ahead.
I've done lots of events and fundraising in the past. And so I'm like, oh, you want to be little baby organizer? I got you. So Walla Moms will wrap ourselves around her and make that a thing.
To your question, Councilwoman,
Pickleball tournament to raise money for Color of Change.
Regardless of a straw poll that says.
We might have a few orgs we could do some fundraise for.
I would love that. Would really truly love that because Candy won Working Families Party, as I understand it, doesn't have a huge infrastructure here, so it wasn't like that's part of the challenge of running for office, right? That the Dems and the Republicans already have this gigantic organization that you're trying to like leverage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and sorry for jumping in there. Just wanted to.
So we'll have to run an OCS style campaign for whoever wants to take District 6, but let's do it.
If we can. You know what our
there is a Denver Metro Pickleball Association, so
for a variety of reasons,
big thing.
Cannot support
white people who don't like running or jumping. They choose
the
pickleball.
Manner in which it was negotiated without council.
Am I incorrect?
And
you do need to do a little running in pickleball, right?
In
not quite like in tennis though.
It's a 2-week.
There's a section that you stay within.
I don't know why this was expedited.
This was a whole hour of me learning about pickleball.
You lasted an hour?
At least.
It's already been spent.
And again, just observing because I knew nothing about it.
And so I don't feel like I had much to do.
Or either a saint or a glutton for punishment. What's that line from Steel Magnolias? You're either on a mission from God or a glutton for punishment.
Remember, I had to keep my poker face on because I had a job interview the next day.
You know, I would not. I would not support.
This is why I had to start my own company and marry a big old white man, leverage his privilege. There's only so high you can go. If you're white skin only does so much. It's not an invisibility invisibility cloak, and it does not, it's not like the fraction that cancels out my big mouth and strong opinions and my refusal to be like, this is bullshit.
Hopefully has more.
Well, again, I embrace diversity and inclusion, so I needed to learn what the difference between pickleball versus racquetball was.
I think it's wonderful that you understand that white people are not a monolith. I really do. There's still though, I don't know if that word diversity means what you think it means in that particular context. It's more like well-rounded, perhaps.
On the position of this contract, you would want it to go to the floor. Because if you
Hi, Rebecca.
and you want support, you would want to vote. If you think that this was floundered from the start and we need to start over, you would want it to go to the floor so that we can vote no and then turn.
We will. Be
and
sure you
have
sign
it
up if
done
you
in a
have
manner
not yet
which
for the
council seems
demystify
appropriate.
demystify the
delaying
technique
committee, I don't
mailing
think
list.
serves
All I
any
do is live
of
stream
the
and
two
amplify
sides of this
voices,
agreement. So I
and
hope that,
occasionally throw mine out
and
there
I
and
voted
decode the
so I
really
hope
white
the committee
speech.
would do so. And I would just remind
Like the
you
one I got hung up on Monday
not
night was the
voting in
pedestrian-friendly
support of this.
corridors.
You're just voting to send it
I'm
to the
like,
floor. So if you feel as if a yes vote
I know what
committee
that
would be
means.
supported, that's actually not
Meanwhile, the
that's not
homeless
correct
sweeps
at
were
all.
scheduled to
I'm
happen the
just
next
saying, let's
morning
send it through the
around the
process
corner,
so we can move
literally
on,
around
whether
the
we
corner.
move on being
So
disratified or
that's what I do. I
start
put together
over
all
and
the
begin
dots, but
process
then I
again.
bring out the smarty smarts and the coolie cools
Agreement
to
that
do
if
all
a
the
majority of the council members say no, we
all
feel
the
it's
actual
better fitted
talking.
for the city.
But
So that
when
would
it
be
comes
my
to
hope
actually
that
what
the
to
voting
do,
members would send it
demystify
so
the
that we
technique,
can
which is
go
run by
either
Carrie Joy
direction
and the
in regards to the
Black Artist Collective. Oh, I'm going to get it wrong. Black
Thank you.
Artist Collective?
Creative Arts Collective?
Creative Artist Collective.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
They don't have a
I have
Patreon. Carrie Joy also has a Patreon. If you go
read this
on
section of
Patreon
the
site,
charter at
I
least
give her
100
$25 a month. I would encourage you
and
to
I'm
do the
not
same.
understanding,
To make these things, it's
why
not
it's
cheap. Like I said, I've been
following
leveraging my company's
the
assets in order to do it, but I own the company, so I can. Everybody else are independent artists. They're freelancers who are doing this of their own time and their own volition. Please support those people.
charter that we would need to
And the Denver Creative Industries Alliance is part of that too.
Denver Creative Industries Alliance, and we'll put a link. I'll go back and put a link in all the destinations so you can sign up for the mailing list.
issues.
And racquetball is violent. I played for a while when I lived in Alabama.
In order to
You lived in Alabama?
I did live in Alabama.
And that we can approve.
Well, it's a
So
white people sport. Of
an
course, it's
attorney
violent as
showed
hell.
me where in the charter it suggests that we would have to vote it down on the floor in order for it to go to arbitration.
Did you kill them?
Legislative counsel.
Everybody just.
Jonathan Griffin, executive assistant. Can you please repeat the question?
They
Can
said
you
in the
show me where
assistance.
in the charter it says that we
Send in
have
the B
to
team.
vote this down, either in committee or on the floor in order to go to arbitration. The charter doesn't seem to suggest that it needs to go through the process in order to get it to arbitration.
I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, if the city would need to make a decision that it wants to go to arbitration, council voting is a way to indicate that that contract is unagreeable to the city. As this process has gone forward, that's typically the way this has been done. If you're interested in doing something behind closed doors, I can't speak to that.
No, you're talking about the city as one corporate authority. There are two corporate authorities and a bargaining agent that are the three parties to this negotiation. In section 9.8.7, it says, in the event that the bargaining agent and the corporate authorities are unable within 45 days from and including the date of their first meeting to reach an agreement on a contract, final offers, and any and all unresolved issues concerning mandatory subjects of bargaining shall be submitted to binding arbitration, and final offers on any permissive subjects of bargaining may be submitted to binding arbitration if both parties agree to submit them. So it sounds like if any one of the three parties to the negotiations cannot agree on a final thing, then it goes to arbitration without going through our process to approve.
Well, but again, to your question about city council being a corporate authority, how I guess just somewhat of a policy discussion, but how would city council make a decision that they don't approve without taking a vote and doing so in the manner that they've always done that?
The process laid out in the charter presumes that we were a party to the negotiation.
That's right.
So then there's that, but
then there's that.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it has to go through the formal vote. So if committee kills it now, it sounds like it would go automatically to arbitration.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me too.
Well, committee, again, to reiterate, committee cannot kill a bill. Committee can only, as Councilman Herndon properly said, committee is only
properly said
say that they believe this is ready to go to the full council to vote.
Did she improperly say something?
They do not believe this is ready and want to delay
the demo on how people like speak to women.
Members, the committee, by killing something, would not be giving every member a proper chance to vote on this. There are 6 members who are not members at all of this committee. So this isn't presenting an opportunity for all of the council to have a vote.
So in the first statement, though, in the collective bargaining section of the charter, it doesn't sound like the point of collective bargaining and arbitration being written into the charter was to put a bill on the floor that we kill. It sounds like the negotiations are designed to get us to a contract that we will approve.
The charter doesn't talk about the process. I mean, again, this is an extra step. So any decision council would make would need to be a decision of the council. I don't know how to reiterate that.
So what is your response to what happens if committee does not advance it today?
Committee can delay, and if committee delays, then no formal action is taken on the bill. A member could, if committee delayed, they have the ability under our rules to direct file that bill. Or committee can decide that they would like to move the bill forward. There's only 2 things you can do in committee. You can delay or vote to move forward.
But there's a different shot clock on this. There's a 45-day window from the date of the first meeting.
A shot clock. Because this is a sport.
What?
That in the charter, it says within 45 days from and including the date of the first meeting, if we're unable to reach an agreement, then it goes to arbitration.
If I may, that's not the situation we find ourselves in now. There is a tentative agreement on a new contract to succeed the current contract. That tentative agreement, that proposed agreement, is subject to ratification by the union and approval by the mayor and city council. It's already been ratified. The mayor supports it. So now the ball is within city council's court, whether or not to approve it.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 2 quick things, and I will be very brief. Number 1, I think we've sort of already addressed this, but I do not only is it is it against our rules, I think, to kill or our policies and procedures to kill something in committee, but also I don't think it would be fair for any one of us on this committee to take the opportunity away from anyone who is not on this committee to have the opportunity to vote on this. I wouldn't like it if someone in FinGov or in LUDI, the 2 committees that I don't sit on, to take away my opportunity to vote on something important that went through one of those 2 committees.
Oh God.
And I don't think it's professional for me to remove that opportunity from anyone who doesn't sit on the safety committee. So I would propose that we move this to the floor and have this conversation there so that every one of our 13 members has the opportunity to weigh in equally on this discussion as it should be. So I move that we move this to the floor officially, first of all. Second of all, I just want to quickly clarify Councilman Herndon's point. He had brought up that we
Herndon's here?
You know, he had said if we do not vote on this, if we do not approve this, that we
You mentioned him twice, so I don't know if he's communicating.
Not 100% the case, because this will.
I feel like I shouldn't be laughing at that, but like,
if we don't approve it, and both parties would give their best offers on all of the different things as we already discussed in that, and then the arbitrator will choose, quote unquote, who wins for the 2-year contract. So I just want to make sure that we all remember that that's the case, because if it's not, that this is going to then go back and we're going to come up with a new contract. This is going to go to arbitration. They're going to pick which offer is better to the arbitrator, not to us, and that's going to be the end of that. So I just want to make sure that's very clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Sandoval.
my read on that was.
Mr. Chair. So now I have to admit I'm a little confused because what Councilman Sawyer just said was not my understanding. And so I need some clarification because I thought if we voted this down, we go back to the negotiating table with the union and new terms can be set. And if we don't agree on those terms, then it goes to arbitration. That this contract, as it reads, as it has been negotiated now, is not guaranteed to go to arbitration. Rob, can you confirm that?
Rob,
because
can you throw me a
I
lifeline?
thought that was my understanding, and according to Councilman Sawyer just said, I was very confused.
No, you are correct, Councilmember.
Okay.
That if voted down, the parties would try to negotiate terms that were agreeable to both sides, absent an agreement on different terms other than what's in the proposed agreement. Any unresolved dispute would have to be submitted to arbitration.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Rob, so really quickly, can I just clarify then? So if we can then come to an agreement on those other terms, does that come back in front of us again? So what happens if all of the other parties agree and the only thing that's different is that there is someone representing us at the table this time around and all of the other terms are the same?
The same as what's already on the table?
Yeah.
Why would we go through those additional steps?
Why would we do
I
that?
don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, because if everything's already been ratified and the only thing that seems to be the issue here is that that we were not represented at the table.
So when I finished my comments, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Thanks. So,
My God.
just so I can make my comments, I have other things than us just being represented.
She raised her hand.
I have other concerns. So just so on the record.
She raised her hand. Is that what it
one
was?
of my
Proper
concerns,
procedure?
But it's not the only concern I have.
Okay.
So with that, as a voting member of the committee, and since these are not kill committees, the only option I see is we would have to delay it to a date certain, which I feel like to protect the city employees and our budget moving forward, we need to get this process moving. And so with that, I would say, although I am voting it out of committee, that's all that my vote would represent today, is to vote it out of committee to go to the floor. I really appreciate what you said, Councilwoman Kanief. I hadn't thought about that, of having it not be voted down at committee and then direct filed on the floor. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, that I hadn't.
Because that would be very dramatic. I think that's how they referred to it, right? The drama of direct filing.
To think about all of the other factors weighing in. So with that, I also support moving it onto the floor to continue this discussion. But that, I want to make it very clear that that's all my vote represents today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ortega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the frustrating part about this process is that we've had at least
every bit
conversations where this has been brought to Mayor Council. And this is where our negotiating team looks for very clear direction from City Council on what items need to go back to the table. And yeah, there's some confusion about or concern that we were not at the table at the very beginning. But we've had 4 meetings
3 of which I attended, where we had the opportunity to weigh in and be really clear about what issues we have concerns about. Not all of us are on the same page. We don't all agree with each other on what those provisions are. I am concerned by sending it back and council voting it down, that we don't necessarily fare in the city's best interest with a new proposal back before us that we'll be expected to vote on. And that's why I had advocated that we move it forward, because we did have agreement. And it's not like we're putting things on the table and giving things to the police in this first year, and they're agreeing to come back and have a conversation in the second year, assuming that our economy is at the same place that we're at today. And that would be the case for all of the rest of our employees as well. The other thing is, if we want collective bargaining for our employees, so we give them the same parity in negotiating their wages, then let's put that on the ballot and have that conversation with our taxpayers about giving those same rights to our employees. I know that we tried in the negotiating conversations to ensure that what is equal to what the employees are having to give up in furlough days is what we're asking these guys to give up. These guys meaning the whole police force, in what we're taking away. So I think the heartburn is with year 2, because in year 1, they're not getting a pay raise. They're, not getting the same level of funding for the retirees. And I mean, at the end of the day, we may have a much more cost impactful proposal that comes before us that we will have no choice but to vote on because it's binding, right? Whatever the arbitrator decides to move forward. And it's, we don't know which position they're going to choose, but everybody came to the table where we asked them to give things up, and they did that. And so that's where we're at today. And I'm comfortable knowing they've already put in writing, they've committed that verbally, but they put it in writing now that they would come back in year 2. So, I mean, let's put it forward. And my only concern is that further delays getting the deal done, so we know exactly how this plays into the cost implications for the 2020 budget. Because, right now it's the $5 million, but it may be more than that, and we'll just have to readjust the budget if we delay it. But we had 4 chances to give very clear and consensus reading on where we were at to move this forward. So just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, we're really pushing time. I've got council members Sittabaka and Gilmore, and I do have final comment myself. So if we can keep it as quick as possible. Councilmember Sittabaka, you're back up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to highlight 2 things to put a correction on the record. Councilwoman Ortega said that we've had 4 opportunities to provide input. That's not accurate. The first time we met, there was already a deal. And by the second time we met, it had already gone to rank and file to vote on. And so there wasn't a real opportunity for council to inform what was happening. The second thing is that the written agreement to come back to the table in year 2 should actually just be translated into a 1-year agreement. And if it doesn't make sense why it's not. And if it goes to arbitration, I think that's evidence that we also submit to the arbitrator that they were willing to reconsider in a year, that I think could fare well for us in the ultimate result there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Council President Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along those same lines, for the record, wanted to reiterate again, I know Councilwoman Sittabaka touched on it, but it was on 7/24 Friday that the draft agreement was sent to the PPA. we had asked to have them pause and hold it because there wasn't consensus. I specifically asked Rob to reach out to them on the 24th and into the week of the 27th of July. And then we had executive sessions on the 28th of July, the 4th of August, and the 11th of August. So we had those executive sessions, and it was always after there had been a contract that had been sent already to PPA. So we did not have an opportunity to discuss the terms prior to it being shared with PPA for the ratification process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So my comments are that, my understanding until today, I may not be the brightest bulb in the chandelier,
correct.
But if we voted this down, it goes to arbitration. Today was the first time I became clear that if we vote this down, they go back into negotiation, and it could, in fact, end up in arbitration. I have a great deal.
Maybe you should try it, Chelsea.
About the
I'm just kidding.
the cavalier way that city
your job doesn't
council
suck that much,
was
right?
considered in this process. It's not to me. It's not a small thing at all that we weren't at the table in the first meeting, and I think,
which is, by the way, the very definition of pickleball.
Mr. Crawford has put forward. It sounds
more
like
racquetball, but
creating a much more system for council participation.
Can't laugh, you
where
just
we
cry.
truly become an equal voice in these negotiations. I have a great deal of respect for a great many hardworking police officers in our police department, and they deserve.
You know what? I do too.
Well,
this isn't about them.
Our hardworking and talented career service employees deserve to be.
This isn't about people. This is about a system that's fucked and needs to be held accountable for what it gets wrong. This is about protections that murderers do not deserve and would not receive if they were tax-paying citizens that weren't hiding behind a shield and a union. That's worse than the Teamsters.
I'm sitting here as a no vote on this contract, but I think it makes sense to move it forward to the floor to have the discussion and decide which way this council is going to vote. So, being extremely grateful that I see no further hands in the queue. Councilman Flynn earlier made him was the first voice, excuse me, that I heard moving the matter forward. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think we should probably have a voice vote.
Okay. Cashman?
Aye.
Torres?
Aye.
Flynn?
Aye.
Kinich? Aye. Sandoval?
Aye.
Sawyer?
Aye.
Gilmore?
Aye.
This item has been approved for filing.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for an extremely challenging and thoughtful discussion. I look forward to carrying this further on the floor. Seeing no further business for this committee, this meeting is adjourned. Have a good day.
Well, well,
that was something.
Yep, they said words. They said words. I'm grateful that you stayed through the whole thing. Otherwise, I probably would have cursed a whole lot more. But it's easier to be classy when you're being classy. Because I just don't have that gene. What did you think of all this?
Again, I think this is a demonstration on the city council's shutting out the public. And even they're getting shut out of their own process, that so many things are happening behind closed doors that are affecting decisions that impact, again, the public. And we just need to think about that in this time of, again, we're not holding officers who act in bad faith accountable for their actions.
Mm-hmm.
it was mentioned in passing, but the city pays like millions of dollars in settlements to families. Again, these families deserve it, but that's still millions of dollars where we could be putting that money towards prevention or to other types of community resources outside of policing. And so I think that needs to be highlighted. And then too, if you're not interested in either of those things, just we're in a recession. And there's a lot of people being impacted at this time in the recession, including other city employees. So to think, COVID's not going anywhere in the near future, and to think that we're giving some individuals raises in 2 years and we're making cuts and probably layoffs in the next year to other city employees, I just want us to think carefully about that. Again, for these next 2 years, it might be a situation where we can't get a raise if we can keep people's jobs. So again, for people watching, just continue to be invested, continue to be engaged, because all of these decisions affect, again, Black communities and yourself as we're talking about budget and how it's impacting you, your family, and your community.
Absolutely, because we're already seeing it in the schools, and we're seeing
schools are getting it the most. So, as we're talking about this budget, I'm really worried about protecting our K-12 schools. And so to think that there are going to be raises for some people, and again, just not even thinking, but not for our teachers, not for our schools, not for supplies. That's where I'm concerned in this moment.
Absolutely. It's an ugly time, and this, even though it's hard to stay engaged, we kind of have to. If you join Wall of Moms, you don't actually have to be a parent, but it's Wall of Moms Plus. Look for the Facebook group. It's private, but as long as you don't look like your real legal name might actually be, then we'll probably let you in. We don't turn anyone away. But we try to stay engaged on multiple fronts. The way it's sort of naturally fallen into this way is that I do this so that others can go do more direct action type things with the homeless sweeps around town, and seeing how that ties into the city budget, ties into this request for Black Lives, how the defunding the police would actually free up so much money for communities to take, and organizations that are already doing this work, to do it well and do it on a wider scope. And then we wouldn't need to, wider scale, so that we wouldn't need to call the police for everything. We have no business calling the police for everything right now as it is, but this would be a much cheaper and more efficient way to attack societal ills during a time of crisis. I mean, like that, I wasn't just being a jackass in that video yesterday. It is appalling that in a time, 5 months into a global pandemic, 5 months, and it should be 8 months, but we were behind the ball. 5 months into a global pandemic, with evictions finally looming as they were. I understand there's a moratorium last night. I didn't get a chance to read that because there was drama. Okay. But it's something about, like, the CDC has come down and said something, it's a violation, so they're likely to stop. But I don't know how that's going to trickle down into policy or how that's going to work. But either way, at a time when of actual legitimate long-term crisis for people, that the city council spent an hour discussing the decibel level of a development's pickleball court while shutting down the community members at public comment who were like, I didn't get to give my input. There was no community session. You talk to the businesses, not the people. It's grotesque, and it's really gross. And even if by pressuring city council to say no on this contract does not lead to the change that we want, then we need to start showing up, getting mad about that, and then start pushing for the changes that we do want. There's going to be changes to the city charter that Kande Sayed Baka has been telling us to ask for all along. Ken, do you want people following you on Twitter or?
Yeah, that works. So I'm on Twitter, Dr. April, APRYLA. So you can follow me there, or aprilalexander.com, so you can find out more about my work and research and all that jazz.
I love your work. I got to plug your TED Talk. You go watch her TED Talk. It's pinned to the top of her Twitter. And the first time somebody retweeted something amazing that she said, because I'm still figuring out how to use Twitter. I've been Twittering almost as long as I've been like part of the Denver social justice scene. So I go in and I look and I saw that pinned to the top, and I'm on the board of the Blue Bench. I'm personally a 2-time survivor of sexual assault who found out at the age of 19 exactly how useless the police are for many things, and how in many cases they actually make problems worse. So realizing at a young age that the system was not meant for me, it meant a lot to see your TED Talk if you want to. Does that have anything to do with like what you do in forensic psychology right now, or what you teach, or?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So the TED Talk is about my kind of personal story and career story of, again, I got into career psychology, working with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And then as my kind of story emerged, started working with adolescents who engaged in illegal sexual behavior. So go check out that TED Talk. I talk a lot about policy, which we were able to change policy a few months after the talk to provide comprehensive sex ed. And yeah, that has everything to do with my research. You took up 2.5 of my hours. I'm working on a book right now to talk about public policy for adolescents. So yeah, just continue following, and I'll get this work out there.
I'm so sorry I ate up your morning, but I appreciate you being here.
No,
you
this is so important too. It's all about all of this. It's all intertwined of thinking about our systemic inequities.
Everything is connected, and I'm so grateful to be connected to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Probably I'm going to run to the bathroom. It's been a while, but enjoy the rest of your day and being young little spring chicken that you are.
Bye, viewers. Thank you all too for your comments.
Thanks again.
Bye.